A janitor with a briefcase crashes a $4 billion corporate signing, stops the most powerful CEO in Chicago mid-signature, and whispers 6 words that destroy everything she built. This deal will ruin them all. Security tackles him to the marble floor while cameras flash outside and executives scream for his arrest. But Victoria Hale doesn't move. Because somehow, impossibly, this broken man in a cleaning uniform knows exactly what she's been too afraid to see, and in 60 seconds, both their lives will shatter completely. If you want to see how a single moment of courage can burn down an empire and rebuild 2 broken souls, stay with me until the end. And hey, drop a like and comment with your city name so I can see how far this story travels. The executive boardroom on the 47th floor of Hale Industries smelled like old money and new leather. Victoria Hale stood at the head of the table, one hand resting on the unsigned merger agreement, the other holding a fountain pen worth more than most people earned in a month. She was 30 years old and already controlled a corporate empire her grandfather had started with dirty hands and dirtier deals. Tonight, she was about to make it bigger. Outside the floor-to-ceiling windows, Chicago sprawled beneath her like a kingdom she'd inherited but never truly ruled. The city lights reflected off Lake Michigan in the distance, and somewhere down there millions of people lived lives that never touched hers. She preferred it that way. Distance made decisions easier. "Ms. Hale, the press is waiting downstairs," her assistant murmured from the doorway. Jennifer was 24, efficient, and terrified of her. "They want the photo op the moment you sign." Victoria nodded without looking up. Across the table sat Marcus Chen, CEO of Cordova Financial, the company she was about to absorb for $4.2 billion. He was sweating despite the aggressive air conditioning, his fingers drumming against the mahogany like he was counting down to something. His cologne was expensive, but couldn't quite mask the smell of desperation. Next to him, 3 lawyers in identical gray suits watched her like vultures circling roadkill, waiting to see which direction she'd fall. Her own CFO, Gerald Reeves, cleared his throat. "Victoria, we should finalize this before market open in Tokyo. Every minute we delay costs us leverage." She glanced at Gerald, 62, silver-haired, her father's oldest friend and the man who'd taught her how to read a balance sheet when she was 12. He'd been there the day her father died, had held her hand at the funeral, had promised to protect the company they'd built together. Without his financial analysis, this deal would never have reached this room. "I'm aware of the timeline, Gerald," she said quietly. She was always quiet. Her father used to scream during negotiations, pound tables, throw glasses against walls until people bent to his will through sheer fear. Victoria had learned a different kind of power, the kind that made people lean in to hear her instead of stepping back in terror. It was more effective and far more terrifying. Silence, she'd discovered, made people fill the empty space with their own anxieties. The merger made perfect sense on paper. Cordova Financial owned commercial real estate across the Midwest, steady revenue streams, reliable dividends, properties in St. Louis, Detroit, Milwaukee, Cleveland. Combining it with Hale Industries' investment portfolio would create a monolith that dominated the region. The stock price would soar. Shareholders would celebrate. Victoria would cement her reputation as something more than the heiress who got lucky when her father's heart gave out 3 years ago. But something felt wrong. She'd felt it for weeks now, a persistent itch at the back of her mind she couldn't scratch away. The numbers added up. The projections looked solid. Gerald had assured her personally that due diligence was flawless, had walked her through every detail, answered every question. The board had approved it unanimously. And yet, "Ms. Hale?" Gerald prompted, and there was something in his voice she couldn't identify. Impatience, maybe, or urgency. Victoria picked up the pen. The weight of it felt heavier than it should. That's when the door exploded open. Not literally, though the sound of it slamming against the wall was violent enough that Marcus Chen actually flinched, coffee sloshing over the rim of his cup. A security guard stumbled backward through the entrance, trying to grab someone and failing. Then a man burst into the boardroom carrying a battered leather briefcase and wearing a navy blue janitor's uniform with E-Mercer stitched above the pocket in faded yellow thread. "Don't sign that contract," he said. His voice wasn't loud, wasn't aggressive, but it cut through the room like a blade through silk, sharp and clean, and impossible to ignore. Victoria's head snapped up. She'd never seen this man before in her life, but something about his eyes stopped her cold. They weren't wild or desperate. They were certain, absolutely, devastatingly certain. The kind of certainty that came from knowing something true in a world built on lies. Security? Gerald was on his feet, face flushing red. Get this man out of here immediately. 2 more guards rushed in, grabbing the janitor by both arms. He didn't resist, but he didn't look away from Victoria either. His gaze held hers like they were the only 2 people in the room. Miss Hale, please, he said. Just listen for 30 seconds. That's all I'm asking. You're asking for a prison sentence, Marcus Chen snarled, standing so fast his chair scraped against the floor. Do you have any idea what you just did? This is corporate espionage, trespassing, disrupting a private business meeting. I work here, the janitor said calmly. Night shift, 3rd floor. My name is Ethan Mercer, and I've been cleaning this building for 14 months. I'm not a spy. I'm not trying to sabotage anything. I'm just someone who knows what you're about to do is wrong. Victoria should have let security drag him out, should have called the police, signed the papers, moved on with her evening and her life. This was insane. This was a breach of every protocol she'd ever established. Instead, she heard herself say, "Wait." Everyone froze. Gerald's expression went from outraged to furious to something else, something that looked almost like fear. Victoria, this is absurd. We don't negotiate with... I said wait. Victoria set down the pen very carefully and looked directly at Ethan Mercer. Up close, she could see the exhaustion written into every line of his face. He was probably her age, maybe a year or 2 older, with dark hair that needed cutting and the kind of shadows under his eyes that spoke of too many sleepless nights stretching into too many empty mornings. His uniform was clean but worn at the edges, and his hands, she noticed his hands, were rough and calloused in a way hers had never been. But they weren't shaking. You have 30 seconds. Use them. What is she embarrassing? Ethan took a breath. When he spoke, his voice was steady as stone. Cordova Financial isn't what your reports say it is. The revenue projections are inflated by 18%. The real estate holdings include 4 properties that don't exist, and 6 more that are leveraged 3 times over to the point of insolvency. Your CFO knows this because he helped structure the fraud to hide it. The room went silent. Not the normal silence of a business meeting, but the kind of silence that happens right before something explodes. The kind that rings in your ears. Gerald's face had gone from red to white. This is slander. Victoria, I will not stand here and be accused by some... You accepted $4.7 million in offshore payments, Ethan continued, voice still steady, eyes still locked on Victoria. Routed through a shell company in the Cayman Islands called Meridian Holdings. In exchange, you doctored the due diligence reports and convinced Ms. Hale that this merger was clean. But it's not. It's a trap. The moment this deal closes, Cordova's debt becomes Hale Industries' debt. You'll be forced to liquidate assets to stay solvent. That means closing the Chicago Manufacturing Division, the Detroit Logistics Center, and the Milwaukee Distribution Hub. 3,000 people will lose their jobs in the first quarter alone. And you know it. You've known it from the beginning. Victoria's hand tightened on the table edge so hard her knuckles went white. How do you know this? Ethan met her eyes, and for just a moment, she saw something in them that looked like recognition, like he knew exactly what she was feeling because he'd felt it himself. Because I used to do what you do, he said quietly. Before I cleaned your floors, I analyzed deals like this one for a living. I know how to read a balance sheet, Ms. Hale. I know how to spot inconsistencies, trace money through shell corporations, identify patterns that don't add up. And I know what cooked books look like when someone's trying to hide them. Enough! Gerald slammed his palm on the table hard enough to make the water glasses jump. Victoria, this man is clearly disturbed. He's making wild accusations with zero evidence, disrupting a legally binding business transaction. I have evidence, Ethan said quietly. He lifted the briefcase, but the guards immediately yanked his arms back. The case hit the floor with a thud that seemed too loud in the silent room. It's all in there. Financial statements, wire transfer records, correspondence between your CFO and Cordova executives, internal memos, bank records. I've spent 4 months compiling it. Every night after my shift, I'd go through the recycling bins, retrieve documents that shouldn't have been thrown away, cross-reference them with public filings. It's all there. Marcus Chen stood up, his chair screeching against the floor. I'm calling my lawyers. This is harassment, defamation, industrial espionage. Then sue me, Ethan said. I'm a janitor raising a kid on $15 an hour. Good luck collecting. Victoria stared at the briefcase on the floor like it was a bomb that might detonate any second. Everything in her screamed to ignore this, to follow protocol, to trust the systems she'd spent years building. Gerald was her father's closest friend. She'd known him her entire life. He taught her to ride a bike, attended her college graduation, stood beside her when the board tried to vote her out after her father's death. This stranger was nobody, a night shift worker with a wild story and convenient timing. But those eyes. She'd built an empire on reading people, on knowing when someone was lying and when they were telling a truth they desperately wished was false. And Ethan Mercer wasn't lying. "Let him go," she said. Gerald turned to her, incredulous. "Victoria, I said let him go." She looked at the security guards. They were both staring at her like she'd lost her mind. Maybe she had. "Release him and leave us." "Ms. Hale, protocol requires—" "I'm aware of protocol. I wrote the protocol. Leave." The guards exchanged glances but obeyed. They knew better than to argue when Victoria used that tone. The moment the door closed behind them, Gerald leaned across the table, voice low and dangerous. "You're making a mistake. This man is trying to sabotage the biggest deal of your career based on conspiracy theories and paranoia. Don't let him destroy what we've built." Victoria ignored him. She bent down, picked up the briefcase, and set it on the table. The leather was worn smooth in places, the brass latches tarnished and scratched. It looked like something pulled from a dumpster, held together by hope and desperation. She clicked it open. Inside were hundreds of pages of printed documents, organized with colored tabs and handwritten notes in the margins. Bank statements, email printouts, spreadsheets covered in calculations so dense they looked like code, financial reports with discrepancies circled in red ink. For several long seconds, Victoria just stared at it all, her mind trying to process the sheer volume of evidence. Then she started reading. The first document was a transfer record showing $1.2 million moving from a Cordova Holdings subsidiary to an account in Georgetown, Cayman Islands. The account number was partially redacted, but someone, Ethan, she assumed, had written the full number in the margin along with a note. Cross-reference GR, Personal Holdings Disclosure 2024. The second was an email from Gerald to Marcus Chen with the subject line, Q3 adjustments per our conversation. The body was brief. Move the Milwaukee properties to the subsidiary structure we discussed. Projections now align with your targets. Wire transfer complete. The third was a financial statement for one of Cordova's flagship properties in St. Louis, showing revenue numbers that didn't match the public filings by almost 40%. Victoria's hand started shaking. She turned to the next page, and the next, and the next. Each one was worse than the last. A pattern emerged. Money moving in circles, properties that existed on paper but not in reality, revenue that appeared in reports but never showed up in actual bank accounts. It was elegant in a horrifying way, sophisticated, the kind of fraud that took expertise to construct and even more expertise to uncover. She turned to Gerald. "Explain this." "It's forgery," he said immediately. "Fabricated documents meant to—" "The account number on this transfer matches your personal offshore holdings." Victoria's voice had gone very, very quiet, the kind of quiet that made people afraid. "I've seen your financial disclosures, Gerald. I know what you own and where you keep it. I know because I'm legally required to review them every year." Gerald's jaw tightened. A muscle jumped beneath his eye. "Victoria, listen to me very carefully." "How long?" She looked up at him, and her eyes were nothing like they'd been 30 seconds ago. All the warmth, all the trust, all the history between them had evaporated like water on hot asphalt. "How long have you been lying to me?" "I never lied. I protected you." Gerald's voice rose. "This company was hemorrhaging value after your father died. The board wanted to break it apart and sell it for scrap. I found a way to stabilize it, to keep it intact. The Cordova merger is part of that strategy. Yes, there are risks, but all major acquisitions carry risk." "You sold me fraud," Victoria said. Each word fell like a stone. "You took bribes to push through a deal that would destroy thousands of lives. And you did it using my name, using my father's legacy, using the trust I gave you. I did what was necessary. Gerald's composure finally cracked. His face flushed red again, veins standing out on his neck. You think your father built this empire by being honest? By playing fair? He cut throats, buried bodies, made deals that would make your hair curl. But he kept this company alive. That's what matters. Survival. Winning. Not some naive fantasy about doing the right thing. At what cost? Victoria's voice was barely a whisper. At whatever cost it takes! Gerald was standing now, leaning over the table, finger jabbing the air. You're 30 years old playing dress-up in your dead father's office, and you think you understand how this works? You don't. You inherited money and a title, but you didn't inherit his instincts, his ruthlessness, his willingness to do what needed to be done. So yes, I made decisions without consulting you, because someone had to, because you're too soft to make the hard choices. The room was silent, except for the hum of the ventilation system and the distant sound of traffic 47 stories below. Victoria closed the briefcase carefully, deliberately. Her hands were steady now. When she looked up, her expression was completely blank, the mask she'd learned to wear when people tried to hurt her. Get out, she said. Victoria. Get out. Get out of this building. You're fired. Security will escort you downstairs, and if you're still here in 10 minutes, I'll have you arrested for corporate espionage, fraud, and theft. Gerald stared at her like she'd grown a second head. You can't fire me. The board won't allow it. I have allies. I own 62% of this company, Victoria said. My father made sure of that before he died. I can do whatever I want. She walked to the door and opened it. The security guards were still waiting outside, probably listening to every word. Gentlemen, please escort Mr. Reeves from the premises. He's no longer employed here. If he resists, call the police. Victoria, you're making a mistake you'll regret for the rest of your life, Gerald said. But he was already backing toward the door. The guards had him by the arms now, professional and efficient. You need me. Without me, you'll lose everything. The board will remove you. The shareholders will revolt. You'll be finished. Then I'll be finished. Victoria held his gaze. But I won't be finished like this. The guards led Gerald away. He didn't resist physically, but his eyes promised retribution all the way down the hall. Victoria watched until they disappeared around the corner, then closed the door and leaned against it. Her legs felt weak. Her hands were shaking again. She'd just fired the only person who knew how this company actually worked. When she turned back to the room, Victoria realized Marcus Chen was still there, standing by his chair like he wasn't sure whether to run or stay. His lawyers had already packed their briefcases and were edging toward the door. The deal's off, Victoria said. Clearly. Marcus snapped his case shut. His hands were shaking too. My lawyers will be in touch about damages, breach of contract, reputational harm. Looking forward to it, Victoria said. I'm sure they'll enjoy going through all the evidence of fraud and discovery. Marcus's face went pale. He glanced at Ethan, then back at Victoria. You have no idea what you've done. People like us don't forget. We have long memories and longer reach. People like you always do, Ethan said quietly from his corner of the room. Marcus left without another word, his lawyers scrambling after him like startled birds. When they were finally alone, Victoria walked to the windows overlooking the Chicago skyline. 47 stories below, the city glittered like a circuit board, millions of lights burning against the dark. She'd spent her whole life in rooms like this one, making decisions that moved money across spreadsheets but never touched real human lives. Numbers that represented people but never felt like people. Tonight felt different. You just destroyed your career, she said without turning around. Gerald and Marcus will bury you in lawsuits. They'll make sure you never work again. They'll ruin your life. I stopped working in any way that mattered a long time ago, Ethan said. Victoria turned to look at him. He was still standing by the table, hands loose at his sides, watching her with that same unsettling certainty. The security guards had roughed him up a little. His uniform was wrinkled, his hair messed up, but he didn't seem to care. Why? She asked. Why risk everything for a company you don't work for and people you don't know? What's in it for you? Ethan was quiet for a moment. He walked to the windows and stood beside her, looking out at the city. Because someone had to. And because I know what happens when deals like this go through. I've seen it before. Hell, I used to be part of it." He picked up the briefcase, held it for a moment like it weighed 1,000 pounds, then set it back down. "7 years ago, I was an analyst at Whitmore and Kessler. Ever heard of them?" Victoria nodded. "Boutique investment firm. They collapsed in 2019, something about a pharmaceutical merger gone wrong. They collapsed because we got greedy. Pushed through a merger between two pharmaceutical companies that looked perfect on paper, but was built on the same kind of fraud you almost signed tonight." Ethan's voice went flat, emotionless. "I saw the red flags, saw the inconsistencies in the revenue projections, the offshore accounts, the shell companies. Reported them to my boss. He told me to keep my mouth shut and my head down. Told me that's how the game was played, that everyone did it, that if I wanted to succeed, I needed to learn when to look the other way." "So what did you do?" "I did what he told me." Ethan's hands clenched into fists. "I kept my mouth shut. I buried the report. I let the deal go through because I was afraid of losing my job, my reputation, my future. And 6 months later, both companies imploded. 12,000 people lost their jobs. 4 lost their lives. Suicides. The executives walked away with golden parachutes worth millions. I walked away with nothing but the knowledge that I could have stopped it and didn't." Victoria felt something crack open in her chest. "What happened to you?" "I got fired anyway. Whitmore used me as the scapegoat when the SEC came sniffing around. Said I was the one who approved the fraudulent analysis. Blacklisted me across the industry." Ethan's laugh was bitter. "Turns out doing the wrong thing doesn't protect you any more than doing the right thing. At least not people like me. So you became a janitor." "I became a father first, then a janitor." Ethan pulled out his wallet and showed Victoria a photo. A little girl with dark curls in her father's eyes, grinning at the camera with a gap-toothed smile. "Her name's Lily. She's 8 years old. She likes dinosaurs, hates broccoli, and wants to be a paleontologist when she grows up." His voice softened. "She was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes when she was 4. My wife, ex-wife, couldn't handle it. The constant monitoring, the insulin shots, the middle-of-the-night blood sugar checks. She left 6 months after the diagnosis, said she didn't sign up for this. So it's just us now." Victoria studied the photo. She tried to remember the last time she'd seen someone smile like that, purely, completely, without calculation or agenda or the weight of expectations. She couldn't. "She's beautiful," Victoria said, and meant it. "She's everything." Ethan put the wallet away carefully, like it was the most valuable thing he owned, which, Victoria realized, it probably was. "Which is why I need to know, if I do this, if I help you audit this company and it turns out the corruption goes deeper than Gerald and Marcus, are you going to have the courage to burn it all down? Or are you going to protect the empire and sacrifice the people?" It was the most important question anyone had ever asked Victoria Hale. She thought about her father, who'd built this company through ruthlessness and fear. She thought about Gerald, who'd betrayed her while claiming to protect her. She thought about the 3,000 people whose jobs she'd almost destroyed with a signature. People with families and mortgages, and children who wanted to be paleontologists. Then she thought about the little girl in the photo who smiled like the world was still good. "I'm going to burn it down," Victoria said quietly, "whatever it takes." Ethan searched her face for a long moment. She saw him weighing her words, testing them for cracks, looking for the lie underneath. She didn't blink, didn't look away. Finally, he nodded. "Okay then, let's get to work." They spent the next 6 hours going through every document in the briefcase, cross-referencing it against Hale Industries' internal records. Victoria called down to IT and had them grant Ethan access to the financial systems. The night shift manager was confused but didn't argue. Victoria made coffee at 2 a.m., terrible coffee, because she'd never actually made it before. And they drank it anyway, too focused to care. Ethan showed her how to spot inconsistencies in financial statements, how to trace money through shell corporations, how to identify the patterns that marked institutional fraud. He was patient, thorough. He explained things in ways that made sense, never talked down to her, never made her feel stupid for not knowing. Victoria found herself watching him work, the way his hands moved across the keyboard, the way he'd pause and stare at numbers until the pattern revealed itself. This was someone who understood the language of money the way she understood the language of power. The sun was rising over Lake Michigan when they finally had the full picture. It was worse than Victoria had imagined. Gerald hadn't just corrupted the Cordova merger. He'd been systematically bleeding Hale Industries for years, routing money through fake vendors, inflating expenses, taking kickbacks from contractors. The company wasn't as profitable as the quarterly reports claimed. It wasn't even stable. It was a house of cards held together by creative accounting and institutional momentum. If this goes public, the stock price will collapse, Ethan said. He looked exhausted, but his voice was steady. You'll face investigations, lawsuits, probably criminal charges. The board will try to remove you. Shareholders will demand your resignation. I know. Victoria stared at the spreadsheet on her laptop, watching the numbers blur together. Her eyes burned from lack of sleep. But if we cover it up, it'll just get worse, and more people will get hurt. So what do we do? Victoria closed the laptop and stood up. Through the windows, Chicago was waking up, cars filling the streets, lights coming on in buildings, the city grinding back to life like a machine that never truly stopped. Somewhere down there, 3,000 people were about to start their shifts at Hale facilities, completely unaware that their jobs had been minutes away from vanishing. We call an emergency board meeting, Victoria said. We lay it all out. We expose every lie, every theft, every betrayal, and then we let them decide what kind of company they want to be. Ethan stood beside her. They'll destroy you. Probably. You're okay with that? Victoria looked at him, this man who'd risked everything to stop her from making a mistake she'd never be able to take back. This janitor who used to be an analyst. This father who worked nights for $2 extra an hour so his daughter could have insulin. You asked me if I'd have the courage to burn it down, she said. I guess we're about to find out. Her phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen and her expression darkened. What is it? Ethan asked. Gerald, Victoria said. She showed him the email. He's calling an emergency board meeting himself. In 3 hours. She looked up. He's going to try to remove me as CEO before I can expose him. Can he do that? If he convinces enough board members that I'm unstable or incompetent, yes. He's been working with them for decades. Some of them have known him longer than they've known me. I've been CEO for 3 years. He's been CFO for 25. Victoria's hands clenched into fists. Who do you think they'll believe? Ethan was quiet for a moment. Then he picked up the briefcase and set it in front of her. Let's make sure they believe the evidence, he said. Victoria looked at the briefcase, then at Ethan, then out at the city waking up beneath them. She thought about her father, who'd taught her that power mattered more than truth. She thought about Gerald, who'd taught her that loyalty meant looking the other way. She thought about all the things she'd been taught about how the world worked. Then she thought about a little girl who wanted to dig up dinosaur bones. Mr. Mercer, she said, I think this might be the beginning of a very productive partnership. Or the end of both our careers, Ethan replied. Either way, Victoria said, at least we'll go down fighting. They gathered everything they had, documents, records, evidence carefully compiled over months of late nights and stolen hours. Victoria changed into a fresh suit from the wardrobe she kept in her office. Ethan stayed in his janitor's uniform. When she offered to find him something else, he shook his head. Let them see exactly who I am, he said. They walked out of the boardroom together, a billionaire CEO and a night shift janitor, and prepared to declare war on the empire she'd inherited. Outside, Chicago gleamed in the early morning light, beautiful and merciless and utterly indifferent to the battles fought in its towers of glass and steel. The sun hit the windows of 1,000 buildings and turned them into mirrors reflecting nothing but more buildings, more windows, more reflections stretching out forever. But somewhere in that city, a little girl named Lily was waking up, and for her sake, they had to win. Victoria's phone rang. She answered it. Ms. Hale, this is building security. We have reporters in the lobby asking about last night's incident. How should we proceed? Victoria looked at Ethan. He looked back at her. Let them in, she said. Tell them I'll make a statement in 1 hour. She hung up. What are you doing? Ethan asked. Changing the game, Victoria said. Gerald wants to control the narrative, paint me as unstable, use the board to remove me quietly. But if the whole world is watching, he can't hide. Neither can I. You're going public with this. I'm going to war with this. Victoria's smile was sharp enough to cut. And I'm bringing everything I've got. They took the elevator down to the 45th floor, where the main conference room was already filling with board members. Victoria could see them through the glass walls. Old men in expensive suits, whispering to each other, glancing at their phones. Gerald was there too, standing at the head of the table like he already owned it. He saw her coming. Their eyes met through the glass, and for just a moment, Victoria saw something flicker across his face. Not fear, not anger, regret. Then it was gone, replaced by the cold determination of someone who'd already decided what he had to do. Victoria pushed open the door, Ethan right behind her, and stepped into the room that would decide everything. The war had begun. The conference room went silent the moment Victoria walked in. 12 board members sat around the table like judges at a trial, and every single one of them was staring at her. Gerald stood at the far end, hands flat on the mahogany, looking like he'd already won. "Victoria," he said, and his voice was smooth as oil. "I'm glad you could join us. We have serious matters to discuss regarding your conduct last night." "I'm sure we do," Victoria said. She walked to her usual seat at the head of the table, but she didn't sit. Ethan stayed near the door, briefcase in hand, still wearing his janitor's uniform. Several board members glanced at him with confusion, then disgust. Robert Walsh, the oldest member of the board, cleared his throat. "Ms. Hale, Gerald has informed us that you terminated his employment last night during a critical business transaction. He's also alleged that you've been exhibiting erratic behavior and poor judgment. We'd like to hear your side of things before we proceed." "Before you proceed with what?" Victoria asked. "With a vote of no confidence," Gerald said. "The board has the authority to remove a CEO who's become a liability to the company. You know that. Your father wrote those bylaws himself." Victoria smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "He did. He also wrote bylaws that require the board to review evidence of misconduct before taking any action. So let's review the evidence." She gestured to Ethan, who stepped forward and set the briefcase on the table. The locks clicked open loud in the quiet room. "Who is this person?" demanded Patricia Morrison, a lawyer who'd been on the board for 15 years. "And why is he dressed like maintenance staff?" "Because I am maintenance staff," Ethan said. "Night shift janitor. And before that, I was a financial analyst, which means I know how to spot fraud when I see it." "This is ridiculous," Gerald said, but his voice had an edge now. "Victoria, you can't seriously expect the board to listen to evidence?" Victoria pulled out the first document and slid it across the table. "This is a wire transfer record showing $1.2 million moving from a Cordova Holdings subsidiary to an offshore account in the Cayman Islands. The account is registered to a shell company called Meridian Holdings. Gerald, would you like to tell the board who owns Meridian Holdings?" Gerald's face went pale. "That's confidential financial information. How did you even—" "I own this company," Victoria said. "Nothing is confidential from me. Answer the question." The board members were leaning forward now, passing the document between them. Robert Walsh pulled out reading glasses and studied it carefully. "Gerald," he said. "It's a legitimate business structure," Gerald said quickly. "Perfectly legal. Lots of executives maintain offshore holdings for tax purposes." "Except you didn't disclose it," Victoria interrupted. She pulled out another document. "This is your financial disclosure form from last year, the one you're legally required to file. Meridian Holdings isn't listed anywhere. Neither are the payments you received from Cordova Financial in exchange for manipulating the merger analysis." "That's a lie," Gerald said, but his voice cracked. Ethan pulled out a stack of emails and spread them across the table. "These are communications between Gerald Reeves and Marcus Chen discussing how to inflate Cordova's revenue projections, hide leveraged properties, and structure the merger to maximize their personal profit while destroying Hale Industries' financial stability. The plan was to force Ms. Hale to liquidate assets after the deal closed, which would have resulted in mass layoffs and facility closures." Patricia Morrison picked up one of the emails, her face growing darker as she read. "This email is dated 8 months ago. Gerald, you told us the Cordova merger only became viable 3 months ago." "The timeline evolved," Gerald said, "as deals do. This is all being taken out of context." 3,000 jobs, Victoria said quietly. "That's how many people would have lost their livelihoods if I'd signed that contract last night. 3,000 families destroyed so you could pocket a few $1 million in kickbacks." Robert Walsh stood up slowly. He was 70 years old and had known Victoria since she was born. Gerald, is any of this true? It's all true, Ethan said. He pulled out more documents, laying them out like cards in a poker game. Bank statements, transfer records, properties that exist on paper but not in reality, revenue that appears in reports but never shows up in actual accounts. This isn't a legitimate business deal gone wrong. It's systematic fraud. Gerald's composure finally shattered. You self-righteous hypocrite, he snarled at Victoria. You think you're better than me? Better than your father? He built this empire on deals exactly like this one. He lied, he cheated, he destroyed anyone who got in his way. And you benefited from every single dirty dollar he made. I know, Victoria said. The admission seemed to shock everyone in the room. I know exactly what my father was, and I know I benefited from it. But that doesn't mean I have to keep doing it. You don't have a choice, Gerald said. This is how the world works. This is how power works. You think those 3,000 workers care about honesty? They care about paychecks. They care about feeding their families. And the only way to keep providing those paychecks is to win, to be ruthless, to make the hard choices that soft people like you are too weak to make. The hard choice would have been telling me the truth, Victoria said. You chose the easy path, the profitable one. A board member named Thomas Chen, no relation to Marcus, raised his hand like they were in school. I need to understand something. If the Cordova merger is fraudulent, what does that mean for our current financial position? It means we dodged a bullet, Ethan said. If the deal had gone through, Hale Industries would be insolvent within 6 months. But the damage doesn't end with Cordova. Gerald's been running similar schemes throughout the company for years. He pulled out another stack of documents, and Victoria watched the board members' faces change as they passed them around. Shock became anger. Anger became fear. How bad is it? Robert Walsh asked quietly. Bad, Ethan said. The company's actual profit margin is about 30% lower than reported. There are fake vendors billing for services never rendered, contractors getting paid twice for the same work, expense accounts that don't match actual expenditures. It's everywhere. Patricia Morrison looked like she might be sick. This will destroy the stock price. The SEC will investigate. We could all face criminal charges for failing to catch this. You couldn't have caught it, Ethan said. It was designed to be invisible. Gerald's been doing this for decades. He knew every loophole, every blind spot in the audit process. The only reason I found it was because I wasn't supposed to be looking. Nobody pays attention to janitors. So what do we do? Thomas Chen asked. He was looking at Victoria now. What's your plan? Victoria took a breath. This was the moment, the choice that would define everything that came after. We tell the truth, she said. All of it. We hold a press conference, lay out the evidence, and announce a complete financial audit. We cooperate with investigators, fire everyone involved in the fraud, and rebuild this company the right way. That's corporate suicide, Gerald said. The stock will crash. Shareholders will revolt. You'll lose everything. Maybe, Victoria said, but at least I'll lose it honestly. Robert Walsh was quiet for a long moment. Then he looked at Gerald. I've known you for 40 years. You were at my daughter's wedding, your godfather to my grandson. His voice broke. How could you do this? How? Gerald's expression hardened. Because I was trying to save this company. Victoria's father knew that success requires sacrifice. He understood that sometimes you have to break rules to survive. I was protecting his legacy. By destroying it? Robert shook his head. Get out. Security will escort you from the building. If you're still in Chicago by tonight, I'll personally make sure you're arrested. Gerald looked around the table, but no one met his eyes. Even his oldest allies were staring at the documents spread across the mahogany, seeing their careers crumble in real time. He turned to Victoria. You'll regret this. When the stock crashes and the lawsuits start, when employees lose their pensions and shareholders lose their investments, you'll remember that I tried to stop you. I'll remember that you lied to me, Victoria said. Every day for 3 years you looked me in the eye and lied. That's what I'll remember. Security came and led Gerald away. He didn't struggle this time, just walked out with his head high, like he was the victim in all of this. The moment he was gone, the board erupted. This is a disaster, Patricia Morrison said. We need crisis management, legal counsel, a strategy for handling the press. We need to cover this up, Thomas Chen interrupted. If this goes public, the company is finished. We can clean house internally, restructure quietly. No, Victoria said. The single word cut through the chaos. I'm not covering this up. I'm exposing it. Today. Victoria, please think about this rationally, Robert Walsh said. I admire your integrity, but there are thousands of employees who depend on this company. If we tank the stock price, they'll lose their jobs anyway. Their retirement accounts, their health insurance. I've thought about it, Victoria said. I've done nothing but think about it all night. And I keep coming back to the same question. What's the cost of lying? Because every time we choose profit over truth, every time we sacrifice people for numbers on a spreadsheet, we make it easier to do it again and again. Until we've built an empire on corpses and convinced ourselves we had no choice. She looked around the table. My father made those choices. Gerald made those choices. And where did it get us? A company riddled with fraud, employees who don't trust us, and a merger that would have destroyed thousands of lives. I'm not doing it anymore. So you're just going to blow everything up? Patricia demanded. I'm going to tell the truth and deal with the consequences, Victoria said. And if that means losing the company, then I'll lose it. But I won't lose who I am. Ethan spoke up from his corner of the room. There's another option, one that doesn't involve covering up fraud or destroying the company. Everyone turned to look at him. You restructure, he said, completely. You announce the fraud, yes, but you also announce immediate reforms, independent audits, new leadership, a fund to protect employees during the transition. You take responsibility and show people you're fixing it. The stock will take a hit, but it won't collapse. And you might actually come out of this stronger. Who are you again? Thomas Chen asked. Someone who's seen what happens when companies choose silence over accountability, Ethan said. It doesn't work. The truth always comes out eventually. The only question is whether you control the narrative or it controls you. Robert Walsh studied Ethan for a long moment. You used to be an analyst? At Whitmore and Kessler, before they collapsed. I remember that. Pharmaceutical merger gone wrong. Robert nodded slowly. You tried to stop it, didn't you? Blew the whistle? Too late, Ethan said. I waited too long, tried to play it safe. People died because of that choice. The room went quiet. Finally, Robert turned to Victoria. If we do this, if we go public, we need a plan, a real one, not just confession and hope. I have a plan, Victoria said. She'd been working on it in her head all night while Ethan showed her the depths of the fraud. We hold a press conference in 2 hours. I announce Gerald's termination, the discovery of fraud, and the launch of an independent investigation. I take full responsibility for failing to catch it sooner. Then we announce immediate protections for employees, no layoffs for 6 months, full benefits maintained, a fund to cover any financial losses. We survive on our actual revenue, not inflated projections. That will kill our margins, Thomas said. Our margins are a lie, Victoria shot back. We've been profitable on paper while bleeding cash in reality. I'd rather be honest and lean than fraudulent and fat. Patricia Morrison was quiet for a moment, then sighed. I'll support it, but only if we bring in outside counsel and auditors. People with no connection to the company. Complete transparency. Agreed, Victoria said. One by one, the board members nodded. Some looked relieved, others looked terrified. Robert Walsh looked sad. Your father would hate this, he said to Victoria. I know, she said. That's how I know it's right. They spent the next 90 minutes preparing. Victoria called her communications director, who nearly had a heart attack when she explained the situation. Ethan worked with the legal team to organize the evidence. The PR department drafted a statement that Victoria rewrote 3 times until it sounded like something a human would actually say. At 10 a.m., Victoria stood in the main lobby of Hale Industries, facing a crowd of reporters and cameras. Behind her, the board members stood in a line like soldiers preparing for battle. Ethan was there too, still in his janitor's uniform, refusing every offer to change. Let them see who found this, he'd said. Let them know it wasn't some fancy consultant. It was someone who cleaned their toilets. Victoria stepped up to the microphone. Her hands were shaking, so she gripped the podium to hide it. Good morning, she said. I'm Victoria Hale, CEO of Hale Industries. I've called this press conference to announce the discovery of significant financial fraud within our company and to outline the steps we're taking to address it. The reporters exploded with questions, but Victoria raised a hand. Please let me finish. Last night, I was prepared to sign a $4.2 billion merger agreement with Cordova Financial. That merger was halted when evidence came to light suggesting fraudulent financial reporting and criminal misconduct by senior executives within Hale Industries. After reviewing this evidence with our board of directors, I can confirm that my CFO, Gerald Reeves, accepted bribes to manipulate due diligence reports and push through a merger that would have bankrupted this company and cost thousands of people their jobs. She paused. The cameras were rolling. Every word she said would be analyzed, dissected, turned into headlines. Mr. Reeves has been terminated. We're cooperating fully with law enforcement and the SEC. We've hired independent auditors to review our financial statements going back 10 years. And we're implementing immediate protections for our employees, including a guarantee of no layoffs for 6 months and a fund to protect retirement accounts and benefits during this transition. Ms. Hale, a reporter from the Tribune shouted, "Are you saying Hale Industries is insolvent?" "I'm saying we've been operating on false projections," Victoria said. "Our actual financial position is stable, but significantly less profitable than reported. We're addressing that through restructuring and reform, not through layoffs or asset sales." "Who discovered the fraud?" another reporter called out. Victoria gestured to Ethan. "This is Ethan Mercer. He's a night shift janitor here at Hale Industries. He's also a former financial analyst who spent 4 months compiling evidence of corporate misconduct. Without his courage and integrity, this fraud would have continued indefinitely." Every camera swung to focus on Ethan. He looked uncomfortable but didn't back down. "Mr. Mercer," a reporter pushed forward, "why did you do it? What made you investigate your own employer?" Ethan was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Because I made the wrong choice once before, and people got hurt. I wasn't going to make it again." "What about the Cordova executives?" someone shouted. "Are they facing charges?" "That's a matter for law enforcement," Victoria said. "But I can tell you that Marcus Chen and his team were complicit in the fraud. We've turned over all evidence to the appropriate authorities." The questions kept coming, faster and louder, until they were just noise. Victoria answered what she could, deflected what she couldn't, and tried not to think about what was happening to the stock price. When it was finally over, she walked back through the lobby with Ethan and the board members. Nobody spoke. They took the elevator up in silence, watching the floor numbers climb. Victoria's phone was buzzing non-stop. Messages from shareholders, employees, investors, lawyers. She ignored all of them. When they reached the executive floor, Robert Walsh pulled her aside. "That took courage," he said quietly. "Real courage. Your father would have buried this so deep no one would ever find it." "I'm not my father," Victoria said. "No," Robert agreed. "You're better." He walked away and Victoria was left standing in the hallway with Ethan. "You should go home," she said. "Check on your daughter. I'm sure she's worried." "She doesn't watch the news," Ethan said. "She's 8. Right now she's probably watching dinosaur documentaries and ignoring her babysitter." Victoria smiled despite everything. "She sounds wonderful." "She is." Ethan hesitated. "What happens now?" "Now we find out if honesty actually works in the real world," Victoria said. "The stock is probably crashing. Shareholders are probably calling for my head. And somewhere Gerald is probably planning his revenge. Sounds like fun. Sounds like hell." They stood there for a moment, two people who'd known each other less than 12 hours but had already burned down an empire together. "I should check on my daughter anyway," Ethan said finally. "Make sure she's okay. But I'll come back tonight if you need me." "You don't work nights anymore," Victoria said. "As of right now, you're the interim CFO of Hale Industries. Salary commensurate with the position, full benefits, and an office on this floor." Ethan stared at her. "You can't be serious." "I just committed corporate suicide on live television," Victoria said. "Why would I stop being serious now?" "Because I'm a janitor. I haven't worked in finance in 7 years. You're the only person in this building I trust," Victoria interrupted. "The only one who chose truth over profit. That's worth more than any MBA." Ethan looked like he wanted to argue, but his phone rang. He glanced at the screen, and his whole face changed. "It's the babysitter," he said, and there was fear in his voice. He answered. Victoria watched his expression shift from concern to panic in the space of a heartbeat. "What's her blood sugar?" he demanded. "How long has she been unresponsive? Did you call 911? I'm on my way." He hung up and was already moving toward the elevator. What happened? Victoria asked. Lily's blood sugar crashed. She's not waking up. Ethan's hands were shaking as he jabbed the elevator button. I need to get to her. Now. I'll drive you, Victoria said. You don't have to. I'm driving you. She grabbed her keys and followed him into the elevator. Where does she need to go? Northwestern Memorial, the emergency room. Ethan was staring at his phone like he could will it to give him better news. She's had crashes before, but never this bad. Never unconscious. They ran through the lobby to the parking garage. Victoria's car was a black Mercedes that probably cost more than Ethan's annual salary. She unlocked it, and they both jumped in. The drive should have taken 20 minutes. Victoria made it in 12, running red lights and weaving through traffic like the laws of physics didn't apply to her. Ethan sat in the passenger seat, phone pressed to his ear, talking to the paramedics. Her name is Lily Mercer. She's 8 years old, type 1 diabetic. Her sugar was at 40 when they last checked. She needs glucagon. Do you have glucagon? Victoria had never heard someone sound so terrified and so controlled at the same time. They screeched to a stop outside the emergency room. An ambulance was already there, back doors open. Ethan was out of the car before it fully stopped, sprinting toward the vehicle. Victoria parked and followed him inside. The emergency room was chaos. Nurses rushing past, machines beeping, people crying in corners. Ethan was at the intake desk, trying to get information. My daughter was brought in. Lily Mercer, 8 years old, diabetic emergency. The nurse typed on her computer. They're stabilizing her now. You can't go back yet. I need to see her. Sir, you need to wait here. Someone will come get you when... She's 8 years old and she's scared and I need to see my daughter. Ethan's voice cracked. Victoria stepped forward. Where's your supervisor? The nurse looked up, recognized her from television, and her expression changed. Ms. Hale, I didn't... Get your supervisor. Now. 2 minutes later, they were being led through the emergency room to a curtained area. Inside, Lily was on a bed with an IV in her arm, eyes closed, skin too pale. A doctor was checking her vitals. Daddy? Lily's eyes opened, unfocused and scared. I'm here, sweetheart. Ethan was beside her in an instant, holding her hand. I'm right here. You're okay. I don't feel good. I know, but the doctors are helping. You're going to be fine. The doctor looked up at Ethan. Her blood sugar dropped to 35. The babysitter gave her juice, but she lost consciousness before it could take effect. We've administered glucagon and she's responding well. She should be fully alert in a few minutes. What caused it? Ethan asked. Hard to say. Could be she was more active than usual, didn't eat enough, miscalculated her insulin. It happens. It shouldn't happen, Ethan said, and there was guilt in his voice that made Victoria's chest hurt. I should have been there. You're here now, the doctor said kindly. That's what matters. Victoria stood back, watching the scene play out, watching Ethan hold his daughter's hand like it was the only thing keeping him tethered to earth, watching Lily slowly come back to consciousness, her color returning, her breathing evening out. This was what Gerald didn't understand, what her father never understood. Numbers on a spreadsheet weren't real, profit margins weren't real. But this, a father terrified for his daughter, a child fighting to stay conscious, this was real. Who's that? Lily asked, looking at Victoria with curious eyes. That's my boss, Ethan said. Her name is Victoria. She's pretty, Lily said, and Victoria felt something crack in her chest. Thank you, she said quietly. Are you a doctor? No, I run a company. That sounds boring. Victoria laughed despite everything. It really is. They kept Lily for observation for 3 hours. Victoria sat in the waiting room, fielding calls and emails on her phone. The stock had dropped 18%. 3 major shareholders were demanding an emergency meeting. Her communications director had resigned. The SEC had opened an investigation. Everything was falling apart exactly like Gerald had predicted. But when she looked through the window at Ethan sitting beside his daughter's bed, reading her a book about dinosaurs while she ate terrible hospital jello, Victoria couldn't bring herself to regret any of it. Finally, the doctor cleared Lily to go home. Ethan carried her out to Victoria's car. She was small for 8, exhausted from the crisis, and buckled her into the back seat. Where do you live? Victoria asked. Ethan gave her an address in a neighborhood she'd never been to. They drove through parts of Chicago she'd only seen from highway overpasses. Small houses crammed together, chain-link fences, corner stores with bars on the windows. They pulled up to a narrow two-story building that had been converted into apartments. The paint was peeling. One window was covered with cardboard. "This is us," Ethan said quietly. Victoria looked at the building, then at Ethan, then at Lily sleeping in the back seat. She thought about her penthouse with its floor-to-ceiling windows and marble countertops. She thought about the distance between that world and this one. "Let me help you get her inside," she said. Ethan carried Lily up the stairs while Victoria followed. The apartment was small. One bedroom, a cramped living room with a couch that had seen better days, a kitchen barely big enough for two people. But it was clean. The walls were covered with Lily's drawings. There were books everywhere. A poster of a T-Rex hung over the couch. Ethan laid Lily in her bed, a small frame with dinosaur sheets, and tucked her in carefully. "Daddy," she murmured, "I'm here." "Don't leave. I won't. I promise." He stayed there until she fell back asleep, then joined Victoria in the living room. "You should go," he said. "I'm sure you have things to deal with." "They can wait." Victoria looked around the apartment. "How much do you pay for this place?" $1,200 a month. It's cheap for Chicago. Victoria thought about the salary she'd just offered him. It would change everything for them, but she could see in his eyes that he wasn't sure he should take it. "You saved my company," she said. "You saved thousands of jobs. You stopped a fraud that would have destroyed lives. Why won't you let me help you?" "Because I'm not doing this for money," Ethan said. "I did it because it was right. If I take your money now, it makes it transactional, makes it like I had an angle all along. You did have an angle. You wanted to protect people." Victoria walked to the window and looked out at the street below. "I'm not trying to buy you, Ethan. I'm trying to work with someone who has integrity. That's rare. That's valuable. And yes, I'm willing to pay for it." Ethan was quiet for a long moment. "My daughter needs me," he finally said. "If I take this job, I'll be working long hours, late nights. I can't abandon her." "Then don't," Victoria said. She turned to face him. "Bring her to the office. We'll set up a space for her. Hire a proper nurse who understands diabetes. Make it work." "That's not professional." "Neither is hiring a janitor to be your CFO," Victoria said. "But I'm doing it anyway." Ethan looked at her, and for the first time since they'd met, he smiled. Really smiled. "You're either the bravest person I've ever met," he said, "or the craziest." "Probably both," Victoria admitted. Her phone rang. It was Robert Walsh. "The shareholders are calling for a vote," he said without preamble. "They want you removed. The meeting is tomorrow morning." "Let them vote," Victoria said. "I'll be there." She hung up and looked at Ethan. "Tomorrow they're going to try to fire me," she said. "I'll probably lose. But I need you there anyway. I need someone in that room who believes this was worth it." "It was worth it," Ethan said. "Even if we lose everything?" "Especially then." Victoria nodded. She walked to the door, then paused. "Take care of your daughter," she said. "I'll see you tomorrow." She drove home through the Chicago night, past buildings that sparkled with lights and wealth and all the things she'd been raised to value. Her phone wouldn't stop buzzing. The news was calling her reckless. Shareholders were threatening lawsuits. Her mother had left 3 voicemails demanding she explain herself. But when Victoria finally reached her empty penthouse and stood in front of the windows overlooking the city, she felt something she hadn't felt in years. Peace. She'd told the truth. She'd risked everything for it. And tomorrow, she'd find out if that was enough. Victoria didn't sleep that night. She stood at her penthouse windows watching the city pulse with light until the sun bled orange across Lake Michigan. Her phone had finally stopped buzzing around 3 a.m., but the silence was worse than the noise. It felt like the whole world was holding its breath, waiting to see her fall. She showered, dressed in her sharpest suit, black Armani that had cost more than Ethan paid in rent for 3 months, and tried not to think about the fact that this might be the last time she wore it as CEO. Her hands were steady as she knotted her hair back, but her reflection looked like a stranger. When had she gotten so tired? The shareholder meeting was scheduled for 9. Victoria arrived at 7:30 to find protesters already gathering outside Hale Industries. Some carried signs demanding her resignation. Others supported her. A few just wanted to be on camera. The media had turned this into a circus, and she was the main attraction. Security escorted her through a side entrance. The building felt different this morning, hostile in a way it never had before. People she'd worked with for years avoided eye contact. Whispers followed her down hallways. By the time she reached the boardroom, her jaw ached from clenching it. Robert Walsh was already there, looking like he'd aged a decade overnight. "The votes aren't there," he said without preamble. "I've been calling shareholders all night. Most of them want you out. They're scared. The stock dropped another 12% this morning. People are losing money, and they want someone to blame." "They can blame me," Victoria said. "I'm the one who chose this." "You could still walk it back. Issue a statement saying you were misled, that you're conducting a thorough review before taking further action." "I'm not lying, Robert." "Then you're going to lose." His voice was gentle, almost pitiful. "I'm sorry, Victoria. I tried." "I know you did." She walked to the windows and looked down at the protesters. From 47 stories up, they looked like ants swarming around breadcrumbs. All of them angry, all of them certain they knew the truth. The door opened. Victoria turned, expecting another board member, but it was Ethan. He was wearing a suit this time, not expensive, slightly too big in the shoulders, but clean and pressed. Lily was with him, holding his hand, wearing a purple dress with dinosaurs on it. "You brought her," Victoria said. "She wanted to come. Said she wanted to see where Daddy works now." Ethan looked uncomfortable. "I know this probably isn't appropriate." It's perfect," Victoria said. She knelt down to Lily's level. "Hi, Lily. How are you feeling?" "Better. My sugar's at 120. Lily held up a small device that looked like a phone. "Daddy checks it every hour now. He's being annoying." "I'm being careful," Ethan corrected. "Same thing." Lily looked around the boardroom with wide eyes. "Wow, this place is fancy. Do you have snacks?" Victoria couldn't help but smile. "I'll have someone bring you whatever you want." She called down to the executive assistant, one of the few people still speaking to her, and requested juice boxes, crackers, and fruit. Within 5 minutes, a spread appeared that could have fed a dozen kids. Lily settled into a corner with her snacks and a book about pterodactyls, completely oblivious to the fact that her father's boss was about to get destroyed. "You didn't have to come," Victoria told Ethan quietly. "This is going to be ugly." "That's exactly why I came," he said. "Someone needs to witness what happens when you choose integrity over profit, even if it ends badly." "Especially if it ends badly," Victoria said. Board members started arriving. Patricia Morrison looked furious. Thomas Chen wouldn't meet Victoria's eyes. Others filed in wearing expressions that ranged from sympathy to barely concealed satisfaction. By 8:45, the room was full. Then Gerald walked in. He wasn't supposed to be there. He'd been fired, escorted from the building, banned from the premises. But he strolled through the door like he owned the place, wearing a $1,000 suit and a smile that made Victoria's skin crawl. "What are you doing here?" Robert Walsh demanded. "I'm here as a representative of the shareholders," Gerald said smoothly. "Several major investors have requested my presence to explain the situation from a more experienced perspective." "You're under investigation for fraud," Victoria said. "You have no right. I have every right. The shareholders want answers. They want to understand how their CEO destroyed $18 billion in market value in less than 24 hours. Gerald's smile widened. "Unless you're afraid of what I might say." Victoria wanted to throw him out bodily, but she could see the calculation in his eyes. He was daring her to silence him, to prove she was afraid of the truth. If she had him removed, it would look like she was hiding something. "Stay," she said. "Say whatever you want. Let's see who they believe." At 9 sharp, the shareholders began filing in via video conference. Their faces appeared on screens lining the walls, dozens of them, representing billions in investment. Victoria recognized most of them. The pension fund manager from Detroit, the hedge fund CEO from New York, the family trust administrator from Boston. People she'd courted, reassured, promised returns. Now they were here to fire her. The lead shareholder, a man named William Hartley, who controlled 8% of the company, cleared his throat. "Ms. Hale, we've called this emergency meeting to address the catastrophic events of the past 24 hours. Your decision to publicly announce fraud allegations without consulting shareholders has resulted in unprecedented losses. We'd like an explanation." Victoria stood. Her legs felt weak, but her voice came out steady. "I announced the fraud because it was real. Gerald Reeves, our former CFO, accepted bribes to manipulate a merger that would have bankrupted this company. I had evidence. I had witnesses. I made a choice to tell the truth rather than hide it. A choice that cost us billions, Hartley said. The stock is in freefall. Our credit rating has been downgraded. Business partners are terminating contracts. You've destroyed this company's reputation for what? Some moral crusade? For honesty, Victoria said. For the 3,000 employees who would have lost their jobs if that merger went through. For the principle that we don't build empires on lies. Principles don't pay dividends, someone from the Boston Trust said. We invested in Hale Industries because it was profitable and stable. Now it's neither. Gerald raised his hand. May I speak? William Hartley nodded. Please. Gerald stood, and Victoria felt the room shift. He'd always been good at this, commanding attention, shaping narratives, making people believe whatever story served him best. Ladies and gentlemen, I've worked at Hale Industries for 25 years. I helped Victoria's father build this company from a regional firm into a national powerhouse. And I can tell you with absolute certainty that what happened yesterday was not about truth or integrity. It was about a young, inexperienced CEO who panicked when faced with complex business realities. That's not, Victoria started, but Hartley cut her off. Let him finish, Gerald continued. The Cordova merger was a legitimate business transaction. Yes, there were risks. All major acquisitions carry risks, but Victoria didn't have the experience to understand that. Instead of trusting her advisors, she listened to a disgruntled former employee with a vendetta. He gestured dismissively at Ethan. A man who was fired from his last position for incompetence and has spent the past 7 years cleaning toilets. This is who she trusted over her father's oldest friend. Ethan's jaw tightened, but he didn't respond. The evidence she presented was taken out of context, misinterpreted, and weaponized by someone who doesn't understand how sophisticated financial structures work. The offshore accounts, standard tax optimization, the revenue adjustments, normal accounting practices. The communication with Cordova executives, routine merger negotiations. Gerald's voice grew stronger, more confident. Victoria didn't expose fraud, she exposed her own inexperience, and now we're all paying the price. Several shareholders were nodding. Victoria felt the room slipping away from her. That's a lie, she said. Every word of it. Is it? Gerald pulled out his own folder. Of course he'd come prepared. These are the same financial documents Victoria presented, but with proper context. Annotations from our accounting firm, legal opinions from our counsel, all of it showing that while the structures were complex, they were entirely legal. He started passing documents to the board members. Victoria watched them read, watched their expressions change. Doubt creeping in. Uncertainty. You doctored those, she said. I corrected them, Gerald shot back. You're not a financial expert, Victoria. You're an heiress playing CEO. And yesterday, you made a catastrophic error in judgment that's destroyed billions in shareholder value. The merger was fraud, Victoria insisted. She looked at Ethan. Tell them. Explain what you found. Ethan stood. He looked uncomfortable in the ill-fitting suit, out of place among these titans of industry. But his voice was steady. I spent 4 months analyzing Hale Industries' financial records. The Cordova merger was built on inflated revenue projections, hidden liabilities, and kickback payments designed to enrich executives while destroying the company. Gerald Reeves received $4.7 million in offshore payments. The properties listed in the merger included 4 that don't exist and 6 that are leveraged beyond recovery. This wasn't sophisticated financial structuring, it was fraud. According to who? Demanded a shareholder from the New York hedge fund. You're a janitor. What makes you qualified to make that assessment? I used to be a senior analyst at Whitmore and Kessler, Ethan said, before that firm collapsed due to the exact same kind of fraud I found here. So you have a history of making false accusations that destroy companies? Gerald said smoothly. That's not reassuring. I didn't make false accusations at Whitmore, Ethan said, and there was steel in his voice now. I made accurate ones too late. People died because I didn't act fast enough. I'm not making that mistake again. People are dying now, Gerald said. Financially. The pension fund from Detroit lost $400 million yesterday. That's retirement accounts, health care, futures. Real people suffering because Victoria believed your paranoid conspiracy theories. The Detroit pension fund manager spoke up. He's right. We've lost a quarter of our investment in less than a day. Our retirees are calling, terrified. What are you going to tell them, Ms. Hale? That you destroyed their retirement savings for integrity? Victoria felt the walls closing in. She looked around the room at faces that had gone from uncertain to hostile. Even Robert Walsh looked defeated. I made the choice I thought was right, she said. If I was wrong, I'll accept the consequences. But I won't apologize for refusing to build a company on lies. Then you won't mind accepting our vote, William Hartley said. All in favor of removing Victoria Hale as CEO of Hale Industries, effective immediately? Hands went up across the video screens. Victoria counted them, watching her career end in real time. 8, 12, 15, 20, more than enough. All opposed? Robert Walsh raised his hand. So did 2 other board members. That was it. The motion carries, Hartley said. Victoria Hale is hereby removed as CEO. Gerald Reeves will assume interim leadership until a permanent replacement can be found. The room erupted. Questions from shareholders, objections from the few board members who'd supported her, Gerald's smooth voice cutting through it all, promising stability and experience. Victoria just stood there, numb. She'd lost everything. From her corner, Lily looked up from her book. Daddy, why is everyone yelling? Because grown-ups are being stupid, Ethan said quietly. Victoria walked to the windows one last time. Below, the protesters were still gathered, still waving their signs, still certain they knew the truth. The city spread out beyond them, indifferent to the drama playing out in this room. Victoria. Robert Walsh appeared beside her. I'm sorry. I tried to stop it. I know. What will you do now? I have no idea. Gerald was already taking her seat at the head of the table, already issuing orders, already erasing her like she'd never existed. The board members who'd voted against her were filing out, avoiding eye contact. The ones who'd supported Gerald were congratulating him. Victoria turned to leave, but Patricia Morrison blocked her path. I need your access credentials, she said. Security badge, computer passwords, company devices. You're doing this now? Victoria asked. Procedure, Patricia said, but she looked uncomfortable. I'm sorry. Victoria handed over her badge, her phone, her laptop. Each item felt like losing a piece of herself. When she was done, she was just a woman in an expensive suit with nothing left. I'll need an escort from the building, Patricia said. I'll walk her out, Ethan said. They left together, Lily between them, holding both their hands. The hallway felt endless. Employees stared as they passed. Some looked sympathetic. Others looked relieved. A few looked terrified, probably wondering if they were next. The elevator ride down was silent except for Lily humming a song about dinosaurs. When they reached the lobby, the protesters caught sight of Victoria through the glass doors and surged forward. Security held them back, but their shouts were audible even through the thick windows. Traitor! You destroyed our investments! Criminal! And from the other side, thank you for telling the truth. You did the right thing. Don't give up. Victoria didn't know which group was louder. She didn't know which one was right. They made it to the parking garage without being mobbed. Victoria's Mercedes was still there, one of the few things that was still hers. She unlocked it and stood there, not sure what to do next. Where will you go? Ethan asked. Home, I guess. Not that it matters. I'll have to sell the penthouse to cover legal fees once the lawsuits start. Victoria laughed, and it sounded broken even to her. Turns out integrity is expensive. It always is, Ethan said. He hesitated, then added, You could come to our place. It's not fancy, but there's a couch. Lily makes excellent mac and cheese from a box. It's true, Lily confirmed. I use extra butter. Victoria looked at them. This man who'd sacrificed his anonymity to help her. This little girl who just wanted people to stop yelling. They had nothing. They'd always had nothing, and they were offering to share it. I should go home, she said, but thank you. She got in the car and drove through Chicago without really seeing it. The penthouse was exactly as she'd left it. Pristine, expensive, empty. She poured herself a drink at 10 in the morning and stood at the windows watching the city that no longer felt like hers. Her personal phone rang. Her mother. Victoria, what have you done? Eleanor Hale's voice was sharp with fury. I've had 12 people call me this morning asking if you've lost your mind. The Cordova deal was solid. Gerald was trying to help you, and you destroyed him. You destroyed yourself. The deal was fraud, Mother. So what? Do you think your father built this empire by being honest? Do you think any empire gets built that way? Eleanor's voice rose. You had everything. The company, the respect, the power. And you threw it away for what? Some moral high ground that doesn't exist? It exists, Victoria said quietly. I'm standing on it right now. Alone, but I'm standing on it. Then enjoy the view while it lasts. Because once the lawsuits start, once the criminal investigations begin, you'll be wishing you'd made different choices. Eleanor's voice went cold. Don't call me asking for help. You made this bed. You can lie in it. She hung up. Victoria set down the phone and picked up her drink. The alcohol burned going down, but it didn't make anything better. Her doorbell rang. For a moment, Victoria considered not answering, but curiosity won out. She opened the door to find Ethan standing there, still in his borrowed suit, looking uncomfortable. What are you doing here? She asked. Lily's with the babysitter. I came to check on you. He looked past her into the penthouse. Can I come in? Victoria stepped aside. Ethan walked in slowly, taking in the marble floors, the designer furniture, the art on the walls that cost more than most people's houses. This is where you live? He asked. Not for much longer. Once the lawsuits start, I'll have to liquidate everything. You really think they'll sue you? I know they will. Gerald's already planning it. The shareholders are furious. The board wants someone to blame. Victoria walked to the bar and poured another drink. I destroyed billions in market value. People lost their retirement savings, their kids' college funds, all because I decided to tell the truth. You did the right thing, Ethan said. Did I? Victoria's voice cracked. Because from where I'm standing, all I did was make everything worse. The company's in chaos. Employees are terrified. Investors are ruined. And Gerald is back in charge, probably covering up the fraud as we speak. So we expose it again. How? I have no access, no authority, no credibility. The board voted me out. The shareholders hate me. Even my own mother thinks I'm insane. Victoria downed her drink. It's over, Ethan. We lost. We lost the company, Ethan said. We didn't lose the fight. What fight? I have nothing left to fight with. Ethan pulled out his phone and showed her a news article. Look at this. It was from the Chicago Tribune. The headline read, Former Hale Industries employee comes forward with additional fraud evidence. Victoria skimmed the article. A mid-level accountant named Sarah Chen had seen the press conference and contacted the Tribune with her own evidence of Gerald's corruption. She'd been afraid to speak up before, but seeing Victoria risk everything had given her courage. One person, Ethan said, but there will be more. You showed them it's possible to stand up. You showed them that telling the truth doesn't have to mean staying silent. I also showed them it means losing everything, Victoria said bitterly. Maybe, but at least you lost it trying to do the right thing. Ethan looked around the penthouse. This place is beautiful, but it's empty. You know what my apartment has that this doesn't? Lily's drawings on the walls, books scattered everywhere, the smell of burnt mac and cheese because she always forgets to stir it. It's messy and chaotic, and it cost me everything I had too, but it's real. Victoria felt tears burning behind her eyes. I don't know how to be real. I've spent my whole life being what people expected. The perfect daughter, the ruthless CEO, the heiress who never makes mistakes. Then maybe it's time to figure out who you are when nobody's watching, Ethan said. The tears came then, hot and fast. Victoria tried to stop them, tried to maintain the composure she'd spent 30 years perfecting, but she couldn't. She'd lost everything, the company, the reputation, the identity she'd built. And underneath it all was just a woman who didn't know who she was supposed to be anymore. Ethan didn't try to comfort her with empty words. He just stood there, solid and present, while she fell apart. When the tears finally stopped, Victoria wiped her face and laughed shakily. Sorry, that was unprofessional. You're not my boss anymore, Ethan said. You don't have to be professional. I don't know how to be anything else. Then learn. He headed for the door, then paused. You asked me yesterday why I risked everything. I told you it was because I'd made the wrong choice before, but that's not the whole truth. What's the rest? I did it because I wanted my daughter to grow up in a world where doing the right thing matters. Where integrity isn't just something people talk about, but something they actually practice. Where standing up to power doesn't mean you're crazy or naive or stupid. Ethan met her eyes. You gave her that world yesterday. You showed her that courage looks like. That's worth more than any company. He left, Victoria stood alone in her empty penthouse, looking out at the city that had chewed her up and spit her out. She thought about Sarah Chen coming forward, about the protesters who'd thanked her, about Lily humming dinosaur songs while grown-ups destroyed each other. Maybe Ethan was right. Maybe losing everything meant she could finally build something real. Her phone rang again. This time it was a number she didn't recognize. Ms. Hale? This is Agent Jennifer Park with the SEC. I'm calling about the fraud allegations at Hale Industries. We'd like to schedule an interview. Victoria took a breath. When? As soon as possible. We've received multiple tips since your press conference. We're opening a full investigation. Into the company or into me? Both, Agent Park said honestly, but mostly into Gerald Reeves and the Cordova merger. Your evidence was compelling. We'd like to see more of it. I don't have access anymore. They fired me this morning. We know. That's actually why we're calling. We'd like your cooperation as a witness. You'd have immunity for anything you report voluntarily. Victoria felt something shift in her chest. Not hope exactly, but possibility. I'll cooperate, she said. Tell me what you need. She spent the rest of the day on the phone with federal investigators, walking them through everything Ethan had found. They asked for documents, for emails, for evidence she no longer had access to. But she told them where to look, who to interview, which shell companies to investigate. By nightfall, she had a headache and her voice was hoarse, but she also had something she hadn't felt in 24 hours. Purpose. The next morning, federal agents raided Hale Industries. They seized computers, froze accounts, interviewed employees. Gerald was arrested trying to board a plane to the Cayman Islands. The news showed him in handcuffs, shouting about false accusations and witch hunts. Victoria watched it from a coffee shop in a neighborhood she'd never visited before, wearing jeans and a sweater instead of Armani, drinking mediocre coffee from a paper cup. Her phone buzzed, a text from Ethan. Saw the news, told you it wasn't over. She smiled and typed back. Want to grab lunch? I'm buying, or I would be if I still had money. Lily wants to show you her rock collection, says you seem sad and rocks make everything better. She might be right. She usually is. Victoria finished her coffee and walked out into the Chicago morning. The city looked different from street level, messier, louder, more alive. People rushed past her without recognition. Nobody cared that she used to be powerful. Nobody cared that she'd lost everything. For the first time in her life, that felt like freedom. She took the train to Ethan's neighborhood. Her Mercedes had been repossessed that morning along with most of her other assets. The apartment looked smaller in daylight, but Lily's enthusiasm made it feel bigger. Look at this one. She held up a chunk of limestone. I found it by the lake. And this one is quartz. And this one I don't know what it is, but it's shiny. They spent the afternoon looking at rocks, eating pizza that Ethan ordered because neither of them could cook, and not talking about the investigation or the company or anything that mattered to the rest of the world. It was the best day Victoria had had in years. That night, after Lily fell asleep, Victoria and Ethan sat on the couch, drinking cheap wine and watching the news coverage of Gerald's arrest. Do you regret it? Ethan asked. Losing everything? Victoria thought about it. Really thought about it. I regret that people got hurt, she said finally. I regret that retirement accounts lost value and employees are scared. But do I regret telling the truth? No, I don't think I do. Good, Ethan said. Because it's about to get worse before it gets better. How much worse? The SEC wants to interview me tomorrow. My old boss from Whitmore already called threatening legal action for defamation. And Gerald's lawyers are preparing a countersuit claiming we conspired to destroy him. Victoria laughed. It felt good. So we're both screwed. Completely. They sat in silence for a moment, watching Chicago glitter through the window. We should start our own company, Victoria said suddenly. Ethan looked at her. What? Think about it. We both just lost everything. We're both facing lawsuits. We're both probably unemployable in traditional finance. So why not build something new? Something that actually matters. With what money? I still have some assets they can't touch. Trust funds, investments my father set up years ago. It's not billions, but it's enough to start. Victoria sat up, feeling energy returning. We could create an investment firm that actually helps people instead of exploiting them. Focus on protecting workers, preserving jobs, building sustainable businesses. That's not profitable, Ethan said. Says who? Gerald? My father? The same people who built empires on fraud? Victoria smiled. Maybe there's another way. Maybe we just haven't tried hard enough to find it. Ethan was quiet for a long moment. Then he smiled too. You really are crazy, he said. Probably. Are you in? He held out his hand. I'm in. They shook on it, two people who'd lost everything making plans to build something from nothing. Outside, Chicago kept spinning, indifferent to their dreams and their failures and their desperate hope that maybe, just maybe, courage mattered more than power. In the next room, Lily slept with her rock collection arranged on the nightstand, dreaming of dinosaurs and futures where the right thing and the profitable thing were the same. And for the first time in her life, Victoria Hale went to sleep not knowing what tomorrow would bring, but knowing exactly who she wanted to be when it came. The SEC interview lasted 6 hours. Victoria sat in a windowless room in the federal building downtown, walking agents through every document, every conversation, every moment that had led to Gerald's arrest. They recorded everything, took notes on yellow legal pads, asked the same questions 5 different ways to see if her story changed. It didn't. When they finally let her go, her throat was raw and her head pounded. Ethan was waiting in the lobby with coffee and aspirin. How bad? He asked. They're building a case. It's going to take months, maybe years. Gerald's lawyers are good. Victoria swallowed the aspirin dry. But they have enough to keep him from running. That's something. They walked out into afternoon sunlight that felt too bright after hours under fluorescent lights. Victoria's phone buzzed constantly, reporters wanting comments, lawyers threatening lawsuits, former colleagues pretending they'd never known her. She turned it off and shoved it in her pocket. I need to do something normal, she said, something that doesn't involve federal agents or bankruptcy lawyers, or my entire life falling apart. Lily has a parent-teacher conference in an hour, Ethan said. You could come with me. Nothing more normal than sitting in tiny chairs while a teacher tells you your kid talks too much about dinosaurs. Victoria smiled despite everything. I'd like that. The school was a public elementary in Ethan's neighborhood, old brick with chain-link fences and a playground that had seen better decades. Inside, the hallways smelled like cafeteria food and industrial cleaner. Lily's classroom had alphabet letters around the walls and student artwork covering every available surface. Mrs. Patterson was a woman in her 50s with kind eyes and the patient exhaustion of someone who'd been teaching 3rd grade for 20 years. She smiled when they walked in. Mr. Mercer, good to see you. And you must be… She looked at Victoria uncertainly. A friend, Victoria said, because she didn't know what else to call herself. Former CEO sounded ridiculous in this context. Failed heiress was too honest. Lily's doing wonderfully, Mrs. Patterson said as they settled into chairs clearly designed for 8-year-olds. Her reading is above grade level, her math is solid, and her knowledge of paleontology is frankly better than mine. She's obsessed, Ethan said fondly. It's a healthy obsession. The only concern I have is that she's been distracted lately, asking to check her blood sugar more frequently than usual, seeming anxious. Mrs. Patterson looked at Ethan gently. Has something changed at home? Ethan's expression tightened. I've been working different hours, new job. I thought I was managing it okay, but maybe she's picking up on the stress more than I realized. Kids are perceptive, especially smart ones like Lily. Mrs. Patterson pulled out a drawing from a folder. She made this yesterday. I thought you should see it. The drawing showed 3 stick figures. One was labeled Daddy, one me, and one Victoria. They were all holding hands, standing in front of a building. Above them, Lily had written in careful letters, "My new family." Victoria felt something crack in her chest. I'm sorry, Ethan said quickly. She gets attached easily. I'll talk to her about appropriate boundaries. Don't, Victoria said quietly. She was still looking at the drawing, at the 3 figures holding hands. Don't tell her it's wrong. They left the school as kids were being released, flooding the hallways with noise and energy. Lily ran up to them, backpack bouncing. How was the conference? Did Mrs. Patterson tell you I'm good at reading? She did, Ethan said. She also showed us your drawing. Lily's face fell. Are you mad? I know Victoria's not really family, but she feels like family. Is that weird? Victoria knelt down so they were eye level. It's not weird, and I'm not mad. I'm honored. Really? Really? Lily threw her arms around Victoria's neck, squeezing tight. Over her head, Victoria met Ethan's eyes. He looked surprised and grateful and terrified all at once. They walked back to the apartment together, Lily chattering about her day between them. When they got home, Victoria helped her with homework while Ethan started dinner, spaghetti that he somehow managed to both overcook and undercook simultaneously. They ate it anyway, laughing about the crunchy, soft texture, and Victoria couldn't remember the last time food had tasted this good. After Lily went to bed, Victoria and Ethan spread paperwork across the coffee table. Birth certificate for the new company, business license applications, articles of incorporation. Starting a business was harder than Victoria had thought, and she'd literally been born into one. "We need a name," Ethan said, staring at the blank form. "Something that doesn't sound like every other investment firm," Victoria said. "No capital, or holdings, or partners. How about two broke people with terrible ideas?" Victoria laughed. "Accurate, but not marketable." They brainstormed for an hour, rejecting everything that sounded too corporate or too precious. Finally, Victoria said, "Mercer Hale Ventures." Ethan looked up. "Using our names? That's pretty traditional." "It's honest. We're not hiding who we are or where we came from. We're two people who lost everything and decided to build something better." Victoria filled in the name on the form. "Plus, it sounds like a law firm. Lawyers are boring enough to be trustworthy." "You really want your name attached to this, after everything that's happened?" "Especially after everything that's happened. I'm not ashamed of what I did. Are you?" Ethan smiled. "Not even a little." They filed the paperwork the next morning. By afternoon, Mercer Hale Ventures officially existed. They had no office, no clients, and barely enough capital to last 6 months if they were careful. But they had something Victoria had never had before, a purpose that felt clean. The first week was brutal. Victoria's remaining assets were tied up in legal battles. 3 different law firms were suing her on behalf of Hale Industries shareholders. Her mother refused to take her calls. Former colleagues crossed the street to avoid her. The only job offers she got were from tabloid shows wanting her to trash Gerald on camera. She turned them all down. Ethan faced his own challenges. His old boss from Whitmore and Kessler filed a defamation suit, claiming Ethan had slandered the firm by comparing it to Hale Industries. The case had no merit, but defending it cost money they didn't have. And every news story about the Hale Industries scandal mentioned Ethan as the disgraced analyst turned janitor who'd brought everything crashing down. "We're toxic," Victoria said one night, reading yet another article painting them as conspiracy theorists who'd destroyed a stable company. "No one's going to trust us with their money." "Then we find people who don't read the news," Ethan said. He was right, but Victoria had no idea where to start. Her entire network had evaporated. The people she'd known for years wouldn't return her calls. The investors who'd courted her now treated her like a pariah. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Victoria was at a coffee shop in Ethan's neighborhood. She'd been spending more time there than at her nearly empty penthouse, when a woman approached her table. "Ms. Hale? I'm sorry to bother you, but I wanted to thank you." Victoria looked up. The woman was maybe 40, wearing scrubs like she'd just come from a hospital shift. "Thank me for what?" "For stopping that merger. I'm a nurse at Northwestern. My retirement account was invested in Hale Industries. When you announced the fraud, the stock crashed, and I lost about $30,000. The woman smiled. "But my brother works at the Detroit Logistics Center. He would have lost his job if that deal went through. So, yeah, I lost money. But he kept his livelihood. That's worth more." She walked away before Victoria could respond, leaving her coffee and her gratitude behind. Victoria sat there for a long moment, staring at nothing. Then she pulled out her phone and started making a list. Employees at Hale Industries, workers at the facilities that would have closed, people whose jobs she'd saved even as she'd destroyed their retirement accounts. That night she showed the list to Ethan. "These are the people we should be helping," she said. "Not billionaires trying to get richer. Real people trying to build stable lives. What if we created a fund specifically for them? Small business loans, emergency savings, education costs, things that actually matter." "That's not how investment firms work," Ethan said. "Then we'll make it work differently." They spent the next month building their model. Instead of chasing maximum returns, they'd focus on sustainable growth. Instead of funding corporate mergers, they'd support small businesses and worker-owned cooperatives. Instead of extracting value, they'd invest in communities. It was naive. It was idealistic. It probably wouldn't work. But they tried anyway. Their first client was a woman named Maria Rodriguez, who ran a small manufacturing business on the South Side. She made custom furniture, employed 15 people, and was about to lose everything because her bank had called in a loan early. "I've been to 6 investors," she told Victoria and Ethan, sitting in the cramped office they'd rented above a laundromat. They all said the same thing: too small, too risky, not enough growth potential. One guy actually laughed at me. Victoria looked at her business plan. The numbers were tight but honest. The projections were conservative. And the impact, 15 families who depended on those jobs, was real. "We'll fund it," Victoria said. Maria blinked. "Just like that?" "Just like that. But we have conditions. You keep your employees, you maintain their benefits. And if you ever face financial trouble again, you call us first. We're partners now." Maria started crying. "I don't understand. Why would you help me? Everyone says you're crazy, that you destroyed a billion-dollar company for no reason." "I destroyed it for exactly this reason," Victoria said. "So people like you don't get crushed by people like I used to be." They funded Maria with the last of Victoria's liquid assets. It was a risk. If she failed, they'd have nothing left. But she didn't fail. Within 3 months, Maria's business was stable. Within 6, she'd hired 3 more workers. Within 9, she was turning a profit that let her start paying back the loan early. Word spread. Slowly at first, then faster. Other small business owners started calling. Workers who'd been laid off and wanted to start cooperatives. Families trying to save local stores from corporate buyouts. One by one, Mercer Hale Ventures funded them. Not all of them succeeded. A bakery in Pilsen closed after 8 months. A tech startup in Evanston burned through their investment and folded. Each failure hurt, but they learned from them, got better at identifying which businesses had real potential versus which were built on hope alone. The financial returns were modest. Victoria was living in a studio apartment now, her penthouse sold to cover legal fees. Ethan still worked nights sometimes when money was tight. They weren't getting rich, but they were building something real. 6 months after starting Mercer Hale Ventures, Victoria got a call from Robert Walsh. "I need to see you," he said. "It's important." They met at a diner far from downtown, away from places where they might be recognized. Robert looked older than he had at the shareholder meeting, grayer and more tired. "The SEC finished their investigation," he said without preamble. "Gerald's going to prison. 10 years, maybe more. Marcus Chen, too. About 15 other executives are facing charges." "Good," Victoria said. "The company's in shambles. Stock price is half what it was before all this started. We've had 3 CEOs in 6 months, and none of them can stop the bleeding." Robert stirred his coffee without drinking it. "The board wants you back." Victoria laughed. "You're joking." "I'm not. They finally understand that you were right, that the fraud was real, that Gerald was destroying the company from the inside. They want you to come back and fix it. They voted me out. They destroyed my reputation. They sued me for everything I had left." Victoria's voice was flat. "And now they want me back because they can't find anyone else willing to clean up their mess?" "Yes," Robert said simply. "I know it's unfair. I know you have every right to tell us to go to hell. But those 3,000 employees you saved, they still need jobs. The company still needs leadership. And whether you like it or not, you're the only person who can salvage this." Victoria sat back, looking at this man who'd known her since childhood. "What makes you think I'd even want to go back?" "Because I know you. You don't give up on things. You don't abandon people who need help." Robert finally met her eyes. "And because the board is prepared to give you full control, no oversight, no interference. You'd have complete authority to restructure the company however you see fit." It was everything Victoria had lost: power, prestige, the ability to make change on a massive scale. She could go back to her old life, reclaim her throne, prove to everyone who doubted her that she'd been right all along. But when she thought about it, really thought about it, all she felt was tired. "No," she said. Robert looked shocked. "Victoria, oh." "I said no, I don't want it anymore." She stood up, pulling money from her wallet for the coffee. "I'm building something different now, something that actually matters. Going back would mean returning to a world where profit is the only goal and people are just numbers on spreadsheets. I'm done with that world. What about the employees, the people who depend on that company? Put someone in charge who actually cares about them. Give them board seats. Let them have a say in decisions that affect their lives. Victoria smiled. Or better yet, turn it into a worker cooperative. Let the people who actually create the value share in the profits. That's insane. No major corporation has ever... Then maybe it's time one did. Victoria headed for the door, then paused. You asked me to come back because the company needs leadership. But what it really needs is a revolution. I can't give you that from a corner office. But maybe the workers can. She left Robert sitting in the diner, staring at his cold coffee, trying to understand how the woman who'd fought so hard to run Hale Industries could walk away from it so easily. The truth was, it wasn't easy. That night, Victoria lay awake thinking about what she'd given up. Not just today, but over the past 6 months. The power, the money, the life she'd been raised to want. Some part of her still grieved for it. But when morning came and she met Ethan at their tiny office above the laundromat, when she reviewed loan applications from people trying to build honest businesses, when she saw the impact they were making one family at a time, the grief faded. This was harder than running Hale Industries had ever been. The returns were smaller, the victories were quieter. They'd never make the Forbes list or ring the opening bell at the stock exchange. But every night, Victoria could look at herself in the mirror without flinching. That was worth more than any empire. Lily's 9th birthday fell on a Saturday in October. They celebrated in the small apartment with a cake Ethan had attempted to bake. It was lopsided and the frosting was runny, but Lily loved it anyway. Victoria gave her a fossil-digging kit and a book about female paleontologists. So you can see that women discover dinosaurs too, Victoria said. Lily threw her arms around Victoria's waist. You're my favorite person who's not my dad. You're my favorite person who's not your dad too, Victoria said, and meant it. Later, after Lily fell asleep surrounded by new dinosaur toys, Victoria and Ethan sat on the couch drinking wine and watching the city lights through the window. I got another offer today, Victoria said. Investment bank in New York, 7 figures. They want someone with my experience who's not afraid of taking risks. Ethan went very still. Are you going to take it? Are you kidding? I'd have to wear suits again and work with people who use synergy unironically. Victoria smiled. Besides, I like what we're building here. Even though we're barely breaking even? Especially because of that. It means we're doing it right. She looked at him. Do you ever regret it? Walking away from a stable job to risk everything on this? I was a janitor making $15 an hour. I wouldn't exactly call that stable. Ethan was quiet for a moment. But no, I don't regret it. This is the first time in 7 years I've felt like I'm doing something that matters. Me too, Victoria said softly. They sat in comfortable silence, watching Chicago pulse with life beyond the window. Somewhere out there, Maria Rodriguez was probably working late in her furniture shop. The bakery that had failed was now a community center. The tech startup that had folded had spawned 3 new businesses started by the same team, each one learning from previous mistakes. It wasn't the empire Victoria had been raised to build. It was better. Her phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. Ms. Hale, you don't know me, but I work at the Milwaukee distribution hub. Just wanted to say thank you for saving my job. My daughter starts college next year because of you. Victoria showed it to Ethan. This is the 3rd one this week. You're becoming a folk hero. I'm becoming unemployed if we don't land more clients. Victoria set down her phone. We need to expand. Hire staff. Get a real office instead of working above a laundromat. That costs money we don't have. So we find investors who believe in what we're doing. Victoria pulled out her laptop. We pitch the model. Show them that ethical investing can be profitable. It just takes longer and requires actually caring about outcomes. They spent the next month preparing. Victoria created presentations, ran projections, practiced pitches. Ethan built financial models showing that their approach could generate steady returns while still prioritizing people over profit. They pitched to 47 investors. 46 said no. The 47th was a family foundation run by a woman named Catherine Park. She'd built her wealth in tech and now wanted to invest it in communities that had been left behind by traditional venture capital. Your returns are lower than I could get elsewhere, she said after reviewing their pitch. But your impact is higher. And I'm at the point in my life where impact matters more than another vacation house. She invested $2 million. It wasn't enough to compete with major firms, but it was enough to grow. They hired their first employee, Sarah Chen, the accountant who'd come forward with additional evidence against Gerald. She'd been blacklisted from traditional finance but was brilliant at forensic accounting. Then they hired a former Hale Industries worker who'd been laid off during the chaos. Then a recent business school graduate who wanted to do something meaningful instead of chasing bonuses. Within a year, Mercer Hale Ventures had a staff of 8 and a client list of 47 small businesses. They moved into a real office, nothing fancy, but it had windows that actually opened and wasn't above a laundromat. The financial press still called them naive. Traditional investors still thought they were crazy. Victoria's mother still wouldn't speak to her, but families were keeping their homes. Workers were building businesses. Communities that had been abandoned were coming back to life. And every night, Victoria went home to the modest apartment she'd moved into near Ethan and Lily, made dinner that was only slightly better than Ethan's attempts, and fell asleep knowing she'd done something real that day. The lawsuits from Hale Industries shareholders were finally settled. Victoria paid what she could, which wasn't much. Some people were angry. Others understood that she'd lost almost as much as they had, and at least she'd lost it trying to do the right thing. Gerald was sentenced to 12 years in federal prison. Marcus Chen got 8. The board members who'd known about the fraud faced fines and sanctions. Hale Industries itself was restructured, though not in the revolutionary way Victoria had suggested. It survived, smaller and humbler. No longer the empire her grandfather had built. Victoria felt nothing when she heard the news. That company, that life, it belonged to someone else now. Someone she used to be but couldn't remember how to become again. On a cold December evening, Victoria was working late when her phone rang. Ethan. Can you come over? Lily wants to show you something. When Victoria arrived, Lily was vibrating with excitement. I got the results from my science fair project. I won first place in the whole school. She showed Victoria her project, a detailed analysis of how climate change affected dinosaur extinction theories, complete with charts and a clay model of a T-Rex. This is incredible, Victoria said, genuinely impressed. What's the prize? A real fossil, and I get to go to the citywide competition. Lily bounced on her toes. Mrs. Patterson says if I win that, I could go to the state finals. You'll win, Victoria said with certainty. How do you know? Because you're brilliant, and because you care more about dinosaurs than anyone I've ever met. That night, after Lily finally went to bed, Ethan and Victoria sat together on the couch like they did most evenings now. I need to tell you something, Ethan said. He looked nervous. What's wrong? Nothing's wrong. It's just... He took a breath. You've been part of our lives for almost a year now. You're here more often than not. Lily draws pictures of you. I cook dinner for 3 instead of 2, and I keep wondering when we're going to stop pretending this is just a working relationship. Victoria's heart was pounding. What are you saying? I'm saying I don't know when it happened, but somewhere between exposing corporate fraud and building a company that actually matters, I fell in love with you. Ethan met her eyes. And I think maybe you feel the same way. But I could be completely wrong and making this incredibly awkward. Victoria laughed, and it came out shaky. You're not wrong. I'm not? I fell in love with you the night you burst into that boardroom and risked everything to stop me from making a mistake. I just didn't know it yet. She took his hand. I was so busy running from who I used to be that I didn't notice I was running towards something better. Ethan kissed her, gentle and uncertain, like he was afraid she might disappear. Victoria kissed him back, certain and present, more real than she'd ever been in her life. When they finally pulled apart, Ethan was smiling. So what happens now? Now we keep building what we started, Victoria said. The company, this family, a life that actually means something. Sounds perfect. Sounds terrifying, Victoria corrected. I have no idea how to do any of this. I've never had a real relationship. I've never been part of a family that wasn't built on money and expectations. I'm probably going to mess it up. Probably, Ethan agreed. But we'll mess it up together. That's better than getting it right alone. Outside, Chicago glittered with lights and possibilities. Somewhere in that city, small businesses they'd funded were closing up for the night. Families were sitting down to dinner in homes they'd been able to keep because someone had chosen people over profit. And in a small apartment filled with dinosaur drawings, and the smell of burnt cooking. Two people who'd lost everything were building something that couldn't be measured in stock prices or quarterly returns. They were building a life worth living. And that, Victoria thought as she fell asleep on Ethan's couch with his arm around her and Lily's soft breathing audible from the next room, was the most valuable thing she'd ever created. Victoria woke up on Ethan's couch to the smell of burnt toast and Lily's voice singing a song about triceratops. Sunlight filtered through the thin curtains, and for a moment she didn't remember where she was. Then Ethan appeared in the doorway holding 2 mugs of terrible coffee, smiling at her like she was the best thing he'd ever seen, and she remembered everything. "Morning," he said. "Fair warning, Lily knows you spent the night and she has questions." "What kind of questions?" "The kind that start with, 'Does this mean Victoria's my mom now?'" Victoria sat up, suddenly very awake. "What did you tell her?" "That relationships are complicated and we're figuring it out as we go." Ethan handed her a mug. "Also that she should probably ask you herself because I have no idea what I'm doing." Lily poked her head around the corner. "Are you my mom now?" Victoria looked at this little girl who'd drawn pictures of them as a family, who'd shared her rock collection and her dinosaur facts, and her complete faith that grown-ups could fix anything if they just tried hard enough. "I don't know," Victoria said honestly. "I've never been anyone's mom before. I'd probably be terrible at it." "Daddy's terrible at cooking, and we still let him try," Lily said with perfect 9-year-old logic. "You could try too." "Okay," Victoria said, and felt something shift in her chest. "I'll try." Lily grinned and went back to her burnt toast. Ethan sat down beside Victoria, close enough that their shoulders touched. "That was easier than I expected," he said. "Everything with her is easier than expected. It's terrifying." "Welcome to parenthood." They sat there drinking bad coffee while Lily chattered about her science fair project, and Victoria thought about all the mornings she'd woken up alone in her penthouse, drinking expensive coffee from expensive machines and expensive silence. This was better. Messier and louder and completely uncertain, but better. The next 3 years didn't unfold smoothly. Victoria had been raised to expect life to follow a plan, to progress in orderly stages toward predictable goals. But real life, she discovered, was chaos held together by effort and hope and the willingness to keep trying even when everything fell apart. Mercer Hale Ventures grew slowly. Some months they barely made payroll. Other months they funded 3 new businesses and felt like they were actually changing things. They hired more staff, people who'd been blacklisted from traditional finance for whistleblowing or asking uncomfortable questions or simply refusing to participate in systems they knew were broken. Sarah Chen became their director of operations. She was brilliant at spotting fraud, but terrible at small talk, which made her perfect for a company that valued honesty over networking. They hired Marcus Webb, a former factory worker who'd lost his job in a corporate merger, to handle community outreach. He knew how to talk to people in ways that made them feel seen instead of analyzed. The clients kept coming. A dry cleaner in Bronzeville who wanted to expand without taking predatory loans. A group of teachers starting an after-school program. A worker cooperative trying to buy out their factory from owners who wanted to move production overseas. One by one, Mercer Hale Ventures funded them, partnered with them, helped them build something sustainable. Not all of them succeeded. A restaurant in Wicker Park closed after 18 months despite their best efforts. A tech startup burned through their investment chasing a product nobody wanted. Each failure hurt, but they learned to see them as part of the process rather than disasters. You couldn't build something real without accepting that sometimes real things fell apart. Victoria's relationship with her mother remained frozen. Eleanor Hale had made it clear that she considered Victoria's choices a betrayal of everything their family stood for. They hadn't spoken in 2 years. Sometimes Victoria grieved for that loss. Mostly she accepted it as the price of becoming someone she could stand to be. Her relationship with Lily was easier and harder than she'd expected. Easier because Lily had a gift for loving people exactly as they were. Harder because Victoria kept waiting for the moment when Lily realized she'd made a mistake, that Victoria wasn't actually mother material. That moment never came. Instead, there were parent-teacher conferences where Victoria sat beside Ethan and listened to teachers praise Lily's curiosity. There were emergency room visits when Lily's blood sugar crashed and Victoria learned to stay calm while her heart tried to beat out of her chest. There were bedtime stories about dinosaurs and fights about homework. and ordinary Tuesday evenings that felt more valuable than any board meeting Victoria had ever attended. One night, about 2 years after that first kiss on Ethan's couch, Victoria was helping Lily with a math worksheet when Lily said, "I told my friend Ashley that you're my mom." Victoria's pencil stopped moving. "What did Ashley say?" "She said you can't be my mom because you didn't give birth to me." "But I said family doesn't work like that. You're my mom because you love me and you're here, right?" Victoria felt tears burning behind her eyes. "Right. That's what I thought." Lily went back to her math like she hadn't just cracked open Victoria's heart. "Can you help me with number 7? I don't get fractions." Victoria helped with the fractions, her voice steady even though her hands were shaking. Later, after Lily fell asleep, she told Ethan what had happened. "She called me her mom," Victoria said. "Just like that, like it was obvious." "To her it is obvious," Ethan said. "You show up, you care. You're here even when it's hard. That's what makes someone a parent." "I'm still terrified I'm going to mess her up." "Join the club. I've been terrified of that since the day she was born." Ethan pulled Victoria closer. "But being terrified doesn't mean we're doing it wrong. It means we care enough to worry." Victoria and Ethan got married on a Saturday in May in a small ceremony at the office of Mercer Hale Ventures. The guest list was 30 people. Their employees, a few clients who'd become friends, Lily's teacher, Mrs. Patterson, and Robert Walsh, who'd stayed in touch despite everything. Victoria wore a dress she'd bought off the rack for $200. Ethan wore the same suit he'd worn to their first board meeting, properly tailored now. Lily was the flower girl and took her job so seriously that she counted each petal she dropped to make sure they were evenly distributed. There was no live band, no ice sculptures, no 7-course meal. They ordered pizza, and someone's cousin who played guitar sang 3 songs. It was nothing like the wedding Victoria had always imagined she'd have. It was perfect. "I can't believe you married a janitor," Victoria's mother had said in the one phone call she'd made, her voice dripping with disdain before hanging up. Victoria could believe it. Ethan was the first person who'd ever seen her as something more than a name and a bank account. He'd risked everything to stop her from making a mistake, had stood beside her when everyone else walked away, had shown her that integrity mattered more than empire. She'd marry him 1,000 times over. They moved into a larger apartment together. Still nothing fancy, but it had 3 bedrooms so Lily could have her own space, and Victoria could have an office. The walls filled up with more of Lily's drawings, photos from their wedding, a fossil Lily had found on a field trip that she swore was definitely from a dinosaur, even though it was probably just a rock. It looked nothing like Victoria's old penthouse, with its minimalist design and expensive art. It looked like a home. Mercer Hale Ventures hit a major milestone in their 3rd year. One of their earliest investments, Maria Rodriguez's furniture company, was featured in a national magazine as an example of ethical business practices. Orders flooded in. Maria expanded, hired 20 more workers, and paid back her loan in full. "I couldn't have done this without you," Maria told Victoria when she delivered the final payment. "You took a chance on me when no one else would." "You did the work," Victoria said. "We just gave you the opportunity." "You gave me more than that. You gave me hope that there were still people in business who cared about more than profit." Maria smiled. "That's worth more than any investment." After Maria left, Victoria sat in her office looking at the check. It wasn't a huge amount. Their loans were small compared to traditional venture capital, but it represented something bigger. Proof that their model worked, that you could invest in people and still build something sustainable. She called Ethan into her office and showed him. "We should celebrate," he said. "We should reinvest it," Victoria countered. "There are 12 businesses on our waiting list. We can do both. Celebrate tonight, change the world tomorrow." They celebrated by taking Lily to a museum that had a new paleontology exhibit. Lily spent 3 hours examining every fossil, reading every plaque, asking questions that even the museum staff couldn't answer. Watching her face light up with wonder, Victoria understood something she'd never grasped before. Success wasn't about building the biggest empire or making the most money or having your name on the tallest building. It was about moments like this. A kid getting to be curious, a family being together, choices that made the world slightly less cruel. She'd been taught that power meant controlling things, but real power, she was learning, meant creating space for other people to flourish. In their fourth year, Mercer Hale Ventures received an offer that would have seemed impossible when they started. A major philanthropic foundation wanted to partner with them, providing $50 million in funding to expand their model nationally. The catch was that they'd have to scale up rapidly, hire dozens of new employees, open offices in multiple cities. They'd become a real institution rather than a scrappy startup. Victoria and Ethan spent weeks debating whether to accept. "This could change everything," Ethan said. "We could help thousands of businesses instead of dozens, make real systemic change. Or we could lose what makes us different," Victoria countered. "The personal relationships, the ability to really know our clients. Once you scale past a certain point, people become numbers again. So we build in protections, decentralized decision-making, keep local offices with autonomy. That's what every company says. Then the pressure for growth takes over, and suddenly you're cutting corners and prioritizing profit, and you've become exactly what you were trying to replace." They were sitting in their office late at night, the city quiet around them. Through the window, Victoria could see the building where Hale Industries was headquartered. New management, new direction, but the same tower of glass and steel. "What would your father have done?" Ethan asked. "Taken the money without hesitation, scaled as fast as possible, probably would have taken the company public within 5 years. Victoria was quiet for a moment. "But I'm not my father." "No, you're not. So what do you want to do?" Victoria thought about Maria Rodriguez and her furniture company, about the teachers running their after-school program, about the dry cleaner in Bronzeville who'd just hired his daughter to help run the business. She thought about knowing their names, their stories, the specific challenges they faced. "I want to take the money," she said finally, "but I want to do it our way. Slow growth, local partnerships. We help them build their own versions of what we've built here, instead of trying to control everything from Chicago. That'll take longer. I'm not in a hurry anymore." They accepted the offer with strict conditions. The foundation agreed to their terms, probably because they were so unusual that they seemed refreshing. Most people wanted to scale as fast as possible. Victoria and Ethan wanted to scale sustainably. Over the next 2 years, they helped establish Mercer Hale Ventures offices in Detroit, Milwaukee, and Cleveland. Each office was run by local people who understood their communities. Each maintained autonomy over their investments. The Chicago office provided support and expertise, but not control. It worked better than Victoria had dared to hope. Lily turned 12 and won the regional science fair with a project analyzing different theories of dinosaur evolution. She was going to the state finals, and there was talk of national competition if she placed well. "I'm going to be a paleontologist," she told Victoria with absolute certainty. "I'm going to discover a new species and name it after you." "Why me?" "Because you showed me that it's okay to be different, that you don't have to do things the way everyone else does them." Lily smiled. "Plus, you're helping me pay for college, so it's only fair." Victoria laughed. They'd set up education funds for Lily years ago, determined that she'd never have to choose between her dreams and financial reality the way so many kids did. "Deal," Victoria said, "but make it a cool dinosaur, something with teeth." That night, Victoria stood on the small balcony of their apartment looking out at Chicago. The city had always been there, pulsing with ambition and commerce, and the endless churn of people trying to make something of themselves. But now when she looked at it, she saw something different. She saw Maria's furniture shop and the 20 families it supported. She saw the teachers' after-school program keeping kids safe and engaged. She saw the worker cooperative that had saved a factory and the jobs it represented. She saw all the small victories that never made headlines but changed individual lives. That was her city now. Not the towers of glass and steel, but the communities building something real in their shadows. Ethan joined her on the balcony, handing her a glass of wine. "Lily wants to know if we can get a dog," he said. "Absolutely not. We're barely keeping ourselves alive." "That's what I told her." She presented a 14-slide PowerPoint on why dogs are actually very responsible pets. Victoria laughed. "She's your daughter." "She's our daughter," Ethan corrected, "and she's definitely going to wear us down eventually." "Probably," Victoria leaned against him. "Do you ever regret it? That night you crashed the board meeting? Everything that came after?" "Every single day," Ethan said, and Victoria pulled back to look at him. He was smiling. "I regret that I didn't do it sooner, that I let fear control me for so long, that it took 7 years to find the courage to stand up." You found it when it mattered. Because of Lily, because I couldn't look at her and tell her to be brave if I wasn't willing to be brave myself. He looked out at the city. I used to think courage meant not being afraid, but it doesn't. It means being terrified and doing the right thing anyway. Victoria understood that now in a way she hadn't when this all started. She'd been terrified when she fired Gerald, terrified when she exposed the fraud, terrified when she lost everything. She was still terrified most days, that she'd mess up as a mother, that the company would fail, that she'd wake up one morning and realize she'd made a terrible mistake. But the fear didn't control her anymore. It was just part of the landscape, something she moved through rather than something that stopped her. 5 years after starting Mercer Hale Ventures, they received an unexpected visitor. Robert Walsh called and asked if he could bring someone to meet them. When they arrived at the office, he was accompanied by a woman in her 60s with sharp eyes and an expensive suit. "Victoria, Ethan, this is Catherine Hale, Victoria's aunt." Victoria stared. She had an aunt she'd never met. Her father's younger sister who'd left the family decades ago over some dispute Victoria had never been told about. "I'm sorry to appear unannounced," Catherine said, "but I've been following what you've built here. It's impressive." "Thank you," Victoria said carefully. "I didn't know my father had a sister. He told people I was dead. Easier than explaining why I left." Catherine smiled without warmth. "I couldn't stomach what the family business had become. The corruption, the cruelty, the way we treated people like resources to be extracted. So I walked away. Your grandfather cut me off completely." "Why are you here now?" "Because I'm dying. Cancer. 6 months, maybe less." Catherine said it matter-of-factly. "And I have money. Quite a lot of it, actually. I built a successful consulting business after I left. But I don't have children, and I refuse to let it go back to the family that disowned me." "I'm sorry about the cancer," Victoria said. "Don't be. I've had a good life. Better than I would have had staying in that world." Catherine pulled out a folder. "I want to leave my estate to Mercer Hale Ventures. $80 million. Use it however you see fit." Victoria and Ethan exchanged glances. "That's incredibly generous," Ethan said. "But why us?" "Because you're doing what I wish I'd done. You didn't just walk away from a corrupt system. You built an alternative." Catherine looked at Victoria. "Your father used to say I was weak for leaving, that I didn't have what it took to succeed in business. Turns out he was wrong. I was strong enough to refuse to become him. And so are you." She left the folder on the desk and stood to go. "Wait," Victoria said. "Did you know my father well, before you left? Better than anyone. We were close as children. I watched him become something he wasn't supposed to be. The business changed him, or maybe it just revealed who he always was." Catherine paused at the door. "He called me once, about 6 months before he died. Said he was proud of the empire he'd built but couldn't remember why he'd wanted it in the first place. Asked if I ever regretted leaving." "What did you tell him?" "That I regretted staying as long as I did. That every extra day I spent in that world cost me a piece of myself I could never get back." Catherine's eyes were sad. "He hung up. We never spoke again. But I think he understood finally what he'd sacrificed for power." After she left, Victoria sat staring at the folder containing more money than they'd raised in 5 years of operation. "This changes everything," Ethan said. "It doesn't have to change anything," Victoria said. "We keep doing what we're doing. We just do more of it." "What about you? Are you okay?" Victoria thought about her father, dying alone in his office, surrounded by everything he'd built and nothing that mattered. She thought about her aunt, walking away from wealth to build something real. She thought about the choice between them that she'd made without fully understanding what it meant. "I'm sad for him," she said finally, "for what he never let himself have. But I'm grateful too. His choices showed me exactly what kind of life I didn't want." They used Catherine's money to establish the Hale Fellowship, a program that provided funding and mentorship to people starting businesses in underserved communities. They named it after Catherine, not Victoria's father. It felt right. Lily won 3rd place at the National Science Fair. She was disappointed for about an hour, then started planning her project for next year. "I'm going to win next time," she declared with absolute confidence. "I just need to refine my hypothesis." "That's the spirit," Victoria said. "Also, I've been thinking. After college, I want to work with you and Dad for a few years before I become a paleontologist. You know, learn about business and helping people. That seems important too." Victoria felt her throat tighten. You don't have to. I want to. You show people that success doesn't have to mean being cruel. That's cool. Lily shrugged. Plus, someone needs to teach you both how to use social media properly. Your Instagram is embarrassing. She was 12 going on 30, brilliant and kind and completely certain that the world could be better if people just tried harder. She was everything Victoria had never dared to be at that age. Deal, Victoria said, but you have to finish high school first. Obviously, Lily said, rolling her eyes. The years continued to unfold. Some good, some hard, all of them real in a way Victoria's old life had never been. Mercer Hale Ventures expanded to 12 cities. They funded over 300 businesses. Not all of them succeeded, but most did. And even the ones that failed left the founders better off than they'd been, equipped with knowledge, connections, and the understanding that someone had believed in them. Victoria's mother died without them ever reconciling. Victoria attended the funeral and felt sad, but not guilty. She'd tried. Eleanor had chosen her empire over her daughter, and that was a choice Victoria had to accept even if she couldn't understand it. The estate went to various charities, none of which Victoria had selected. Eleanor's final message was clear. You made your choice, live with it. Victoria was living with it just fine. On Victoria's 40th birthday, Ethan surprised her with a party at their office. All their employees, clients, and friends showed up. Maria Rodriguez brought furniture she'd made specifically for the occasion. The teachers from the after-school program brought a cake decorated with spreadsheets and dinosaurs, an inside joke about the weird family they'd become. Speech! Someone shouted, and the room picked up the chant. Victoria stood up, looking at all these faces. People she'd helped and people who'd helped her and people who'd shown her that business could be about building community instead of extracting value. 10 years ago, I was the CEO of a major corporation, she said. I had power, money, and absolutely no idea who I was underneath all of it. Then a janitor carrying a briefcase crashed my board meeting and destroyed everything I thought I wanted. Laughter rippled through the room. Ethan grinned at her. I thought losing this company would destroy me. Turns out it saved me, because it forced me to figure out what actually mattered. Victoria's voice caught. Not the empire. Not the reputation. Not the bank account. What mattered was being able to look at myself in the mirror, being able to sleep at night knowing I hadn't sacrificed other people for my success. Being able to show my daughter that integrity isn't just something we talk about, it's something we practice. She looked at Lily, who was 15 now, taller, and still obsessed with dinosaurs, but also interested in economics and social justice, and changing systems from within. Someone told me once that courage means being terrified and doing the right thing anyway. I've spent the last decade trying to live up to that. Some days I succeed, some days I fail, but at least I'm trying, and I'm trying alongside people who care about the same things. That's more valuable than any empire. The room erupted in applause. Victoria sat down, feeling Ethan's hand squeeze hers under the table. Later, after everyone had left and they were cleaning up, Lily said, "That was a good speech, Mom." Mom. Victoria would never get tired of hearing that. Thanks, sweetheart. Are you happy? Like really happy? Not just pretending for everyone else? Victoria thought about it. Was she happy? Her relationship with her birth family was destroyed. She'd lost billions of dollars. She worked harder now for less recognition than she'd ever had. Some days were exhausting. Some days she wanted to quit. But she woke up next to a man who loved her for who she was, not what she could give him. She was raising a daughter who believed the world could be better. She was building businesses that actually helped people instead of exploiting them. She had friends who were more than networking opportunities, and employees who were more than resources to be managed. Yeah, she said, I really am. Good, Lily said, because I'm going to need your help with my college essays next year, and it would be super weird if you were having some kind of midlife crisis while reading them. Victoria laughed and pulled Lily into a hug. Deal. That night, Victoria and Ethan walked home through their neighborhood. It was nothing like the area where Victoria had grown up, with its gated mansions and manicured lawns. This was real Chicago. Bodegas on corners, kids playing basketball under streetlights, neighbors sitting on stoops talking and laughing. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if I hadn't crashed that meeting? Ethan asked. All the time, Victoria admitted. I probably would have signed the merger, destroyed 3,000 lives. Eventually the fraud would have come out anyway, and I would have been blamed for not catching it. I'd be in prison now, or at least completely ruined. But you wouldn't have met me. Exactly. So really you saved me twice. Once from the merger, and once from a life without you and Lily. They walked in comfortable silence for a while. Then Ethan said, I have a confession. What? That night I crashed the meeting? I almost didn't do it. I stood outside the building for 20 minutes trying to convince myself it wasn't my problem, that I should just go home, hug my daughter, and forget what I'd found. What changed your mind? I thought about what I'd tell Lily if she asked me someday why I didn't try to stop it, and I couldn't come up with an answer that wouldn't make me ashamed. Ethan squeezed her hand. Turns out the hardest choices are the ones where you have to decide what kind of person you want to be. Everything else is just details. Victoria understood that now. The question wasn't whether to choose integrity over profit. That was easy in theory. The hard part was choosing it when it cost you everything, when everyone told you that you were wrong, when the easier path was right there waiting. She'd made that choice. So had Ethan, and somehow, impossibly, it had led them here. They reached their building and climbed the stairs to their apartment. Inside, Lily was already asleep, her room covered in posters of dinosaurs and scientists, and a new edition, a quote she'd written out in careful letters and pinned above her desk. Courage isn't the absence of fear, it's being terrified and doing the right thing anyway. Victoria stood in the doorway watching her daughter sleep, this person she'd somehow become responsible for helping shape into a human being. She still didn't know if she was doing it right. She probably wasn't. But she was trying, and maybe that was enough. In the living room, framed photographs covered one wall. Their wedding day. Lily's science fair victories. The opening of their first office outside Chicago. Maria Rodriguez cutting the ribbon at her expanded factory. Random moments that wouldn't matter to anyone else but meant everything to them. This was success, Victoria thought. Not the corner office, or the stock price, or the mansion with too many empty rooms. This. A life built on choices that let you sleep at night. Work that actually helped people. A family cobbled together from courage and circumstance, and the willingness to keep showing up. Ethan came up behind her and wrapped his arms around her waist. What are you thinking about? He asked. About how my father spent his whole life building an empire and died alone, and how I lost that empire and gained everything that actually matters. No regrets? Victoria thought about her penthouse, her power, her position at the top of a world that valued money over humanity. She thought about the life she could have had if she'd chosen differently. Not one, she said, and she meant it, because in the end, this was the truth she'd learned. Empires crumbled, stock prices fluctuated, reputations rose and fell. But the person you became, the choices you made when no one was watching, the courage you found to stand up even when it cost everything, that lasted. Her father had taught her to value power. Gerald had taught her that loyalty could be bought. Her mother had taught her that family was a transaction. But Ethan had taught her that integrity mattered. Lily had taught her that love didn't have to be earned. And together, they'd taught her that losing everything could be the first step toward finding what actually mattered. That night, Victoria fell asleep in a modest apartment in a neighborhood she'd never have visited in her old life, beside a man who'd once cleaned her floors, thinking about the daughter sleeping in the next room who wanted to dig up dinosaur bones and change the world. She'd lost billions of dollars. She'd sacrificed her reputation. She'd destroyed the empire her family had spent generations building. And she'd never been richer.